Chapter 319. Heroes have always emerged from youth. Is Brother Nangong really a genius from the same class as us? Seeing the figure in the snow-covered clothes slowly walking towards them, Lu Daju's eyelids trembled slightly, and he whispered. He's been doing business with his father since he was young. He has seen many young talents, but he has never seen someone as extraordinary as the other party. The God King killed the quasi-saint with one sword. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed it even if he was beaten to death. Wang Tung, Chao Li, and others standing by all looked at the newcomer with admiration on their faces, and their eyes were filled with burning passion. There is no way. Every genius is strong, let alone such an absurdly strong genius. Xi Ming's beautiful eyes were also shining brightly, and her purple hair was as beautiful as violets growing on a waterfall. She looked straight at Nangong Chen, as if there was nothing else in her eyes. The young man who had made a splash in the astronomy pavilion that day seemed to have astonished everyone once again. Chu Yan, who was standing aside, took a deep breath. There seemed to be a complicated look on her crystal-white face as she stared at the person who came quietly. Although the shock the other party brought to her before was big enough, after all, the ancestor was defeated by the other party. But at that time, he did not expect that the opponent's true strength was so strong that even a quasi-saint's Wan Xin could be cut off by him. She seemed to be finding it increasingly difficult to understand the young man she first met in the Nine Heaven Secret Realm. Soon, as the sound of steady footsteps approached, everyone became excited and wanted to surround it. But soon, another white figure quietly appeared in front of Nangong Chen, blocking Li Qixin and the others. Su Li carefully scanned Nangong Chen from head to toe. After a long moment, a hint of suspicion appeared on her beautiful face, and she opened her red lips slightly. Are you okay? Behind that cold and pleasant voice, there was a deep concern. Others may not know, but she knew that after Nangong Chen used the human emperor sword in the Great Zhou Dynasty that day, he fell into a state of weakness for a long time. If she hadn't happened to see Nangong Chen secretly taking the holy medicine that day, she would probably have been kept in the dark for the rest of her life by his words, "It's okay." Of course, this also shows that behind this tremendous power, it is not as easy as people see it. Nangong Chen raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that this girl could really see that something was wrong with him. He thought he had hidden it perfectly. The sword strike just now had drained all his energy and blood, and even all the medicinal power of the elixir was devoured. At this moment, the spiritual sea was still continuously absorbing his energy to restore his vitality, like a bottomless pit. Of course, only someone with his physique could develop himself to the extreme and overdraw so much energy. If it were an ordinary person, I'm afraid even the human emperor sword wouldn't be able to withstand it, let alone swing it. Seeing the boy's momentary slowness, Su Li's eyes were thoughtful. She waved her white hand, and a ray of light enveloped the two of them, and soon disappeared from the spot. Seeing this, the people who had just wanted to gather around were now confused. Brother Nangong, it doesn't look like he's in trouble. How come he was taken away directly by Goddess Su? Xiong scratched his head and made a silly sound. The others also frowned, trying to recall if there was really something wrong with Nangong Chen just now. Only Lu Daju's eyes flashed with a gleam of light, and he said thoughtfully, I understand. Goddess Su must know that Brother Nangong is under too much pressure, and she is ready to help him relieve it. As for how to relieve it, After saying this, he winked at everyone, afraid that they didn't know his dirty thoughts. Li Qixin and the other men burst into laughter when they heard this, although no one believed it. Xi Ming and Chu Yin frowned slightly, looked at Xiongda, and walked away a few steps without saying a word. Nausea. Xi Ming rolled her eyes and said unhappily, a blush flashing across her face. As for Jiang Yingwei, who seemed a little out of place, her eyes flickered at this moment, and no one knew what she was thinking. At this moment in the outside world, the moment Nangong Chen killed Wan Xin with one sword, the entire Xiantian domain fell silent. Am I dreaming? Someone murmured, looking at the scene in the void. It was like a dream. No one responded, and everyone was silent. This scene was so shocking that they were speechless for a moment. Xianjie, who was invincible in the past, was killed by a man with double pupils, and he could still say that the other party was just a quasi-saint. And now, he is a true quasi-saint. They have seen with their own eyes how dominant he is in Xinzong in the past 2 months. How invincible he is. Many people even believe that the champion of this session had already been decided by Wan Xin, and the others were just runners-up. But now, a young man who suddenly appeared in the world, who was not favored by everyone at the beginning, fought all the way to now. First killed the upper realm champion Xianjie, then killed the nightmare Wan Xin, and won the Xinzong championship in one fell swoop. What an honor it is to have won the championship for Xiantian territory. After a long time, people gradually came out of their shock and spoke slowly. Legend. This is definitely the most extraordinary genius in the history of Tianyuan territory. He will be remembered in the long river of history. The one with double pupils has single-handedly proved to the entire 10 realms that the Tianyuan realm can also have an invincible genius, a genius who can suppress his peers and make them look down upon him. Oh my God, this is so shocking. As the size spread, the reputation of the young man in the snow-covered clothes in the picture also resounded throughout the 3 states. The supporters of those with double pupils were even more excited, waving their fists and their faces flushed. Did you see that? Who is the immortal hidden champion? Who is the most powerful genius of the human race? Where are those doubts from before? Soon, the cheers that sounded like loud bells and drums spread across the entire land like mushrooms after rain. With the cultivation level of a quasi-saint, he was able to leap forward in cultivation level and kill 4 long-famous leaders of the blood god sect with his sword. Apart from those with double pupils, who else in the world could do this? At this moment, whether it was the tiny country in East Shenzhou or the top power in Central Shenzhou, there were strong men who felt it, looking at the peerless figure in the projection, full of shock and fear. Being able to kill a quasi-saint meant that he was no longer the fledgling genius in their eyes. The other party's wings are fully grown, and he has truly stepped into the ranks of the strongest in the entire Tianyuan realm, becoming a member of the top cultivators who control the 3 continents. This also made those great sects think deeply about how they should face the other party if they meet him in the future. No one would have thought that the young man who was an ordinary person in the immortal treasure that day has grown to the point where he's admired by all cultivators in the world. In the entire Chu city, the void was silent. These powerful people from various forces did not dare to easily comment on the young man in the projection. With the other party's strength, if we meet them, we will probably have to call them fellow Taoists. Since they are fellow Taoists, they are of the same generation. Who would easily comment on their fellow Taoists? Wouldn't they be looking down on themselves? They still understand this rule. If that sword were to strike them, I'm afraid that more than half of the strong men in the void today would be gone. No one can guarantee that they can survive that shocking sword. Heroes have always emerged from youth. After watching all this, Zhao lay sighed with regret. I'm afraid that since ancient times, there is only one person in the world, Nangong Chen, who can make the Holy Lord of the Heavenly Sword Holy Land sigh like this. Chapter 320. Multiple reactions, undercurrents surge in Chu City. At the same time, in the private room on the top floor of Zuishin Pavilion. It's not a human. It's not a human. Qinsong no longer had the calmness of the past. He stared at the projection in the void, repeating the same sentence over and over again. Who would have thought that this boy could kill a quasi-saint just after becoming a divine king? Moreover, he was not just an ordinary quasi-saint, but Luan Xin, one of the 4 leaders of the blood god sect whose notoriety resounded throughout the Tianyuan realm. Although he himself was a saint, he actually felt an inexplicable palpitation when he struck the sword. You know, it was just a projection. If you saw it with your own eyes, you wouldn't know how shocking it would be. The graceful girl wearing a black and gold phoenix tail skirt beside her also had a complicated expression on her pretty face. Nangong Chen's strength has broken her inherent impression of genius. She really can't imagine how someone can be so evil. She herself is also at the God King level, but is far from being able to kill enemies across borders. At most, she can only fight across small realms, and that is when she is giving her all. After this is over, you must become his disciple, no matter what. Just as Zhu Ying was lost in thought, Qinsong took a deep breath and spoke with an unquestionable tone. Looking at the serious face in front of her, with white eyebrows drooping and face wrinkled like an ancient tree, Zhu Ying pursed her lips slightly and nodded. What if he doesn't accept me? Zhu Ying's beautiful eyes were filled with worry. No, as long as you put away your usual arrogance, he will definitely not refuse. Qinsong smiled. He knew very well how much strategic value a genius who would reach the perfection of formation intent would have in the future. He was a priceless treasure. If he hadn't seen that Nangong Chen was such a monster with the appearance of a dragon, he would not have handed over such a genius to others. Zhu Ying shook her head. After seeing this treasure trove of immortals, she had already been convinced. How could she be arrogant in front of such a genius? Wouldn't that be humiliating to herself? As for the second half of the ancestor's affirmative words, after she heard it, her pretty face showed a hint of confusion. Qinsong did not explain too much, but just glanced out the window. Gubo's eyelids were slightly curved, and it was unknown what he was thinking. After a long time, he said to himself, "The day the immortal hidden genius returns, the world of Chu City will change. Moreover, this time there is such an amazing genius. Those people must be worried to death, ha ha. Well, I am an old, withered tree, so I will enter this game one last time. Whether I live or die depends on fate." At this moment, Dark clouds covered the sky above Chu City, blocking out the sun, as if a pair of invisible hands were swallowing up the entire town. Chu family. Everything will be over tomorrow. Is the seven-star formation ready? After watching that earth-shattering battle, Chu Shanhe suppressed the shock in his heart, looked at the audience, and asked, to the clan leader, everything is fine. The ancestral land has already arranged the center of the formation, and it will be activated tomorrow. An elder from the clan below responded respectfully. After listening to this, Chu Shanhe nodded, but he still felt a little uneasy and continued. Send 2 more clan elders to guard the ancestral land, and have the clan's formation master carefully inspect the 7-star formation to ensure it is foolproof tomorrow. By the way, no outsiders are allowed to enter Chu City these days. Only people can enter and leave. The border gates are on high alert and strictly guarded. If anyone has any ill intentions, please report them immediately. Previously, putting the 2 Blood God sect members into the immortal treasures was already a huge mistake. If something happened to those geniuses on their return journey tomorrow, their Chu family would be considered the eternal sinners of the human race. Moreover, this time's immortal treasure trove is the best result ever achieved by Tianyuan territory. No matter what, those geniuses cannot afford to lose. Yes. After hearing this, a short elder of the tribe also responded respectfully, and then his figure flashed and left the place. The people in the audience listened quietly with some fear in their eyes. This was the first time they had seen the patriarch being so vigilant since the Chu family had built so many immortal treasures. Is something going to happen tomorrow? Impossible. The last time a Xianzong Tianjiao came out and was assassinated was 10,000 years ago. Only some of the very senior elders in the clan remember it. And since the previous patriarch strengthened the protection, and with the top-level formation of the 7-star formation, nothing like this has happened again. Over time, no one cared anymore. Some of the disciples shook their heads secretly, thinking that the clan leader was a little too vigilant, but they did not dare to say anything more. Not to mention that this immortal treasure has attracted the attention of the entire Xiantian realm, and many powerful people have gathered here, such as Zhao Lei, the heavenly sword saint who has been watching the battle from the sky in recent days, and some people have seen Chun Song, the heavenly formation patriarch, appear in the drunken immortal pavilion. Who is Zhao Lei? He is known as the strongest person in the world in northern Shenzhou, and Chun Song is also an unrivaled master at the saint level. With 2 powerful men here, plus the Chu family's ancestor in their ancestral land, 3 saints, I'm afraid only the ignorant would raise an eyebrow. However, Chu Shanhe knew exactly what they were thinking. It looked foolproof on paper, but who knew if the Blood God cult would have other tricks up its sleeve? After all, who would have thought that after destroying Tianqi City, the Blood God cult could still sneak into this immortal treasure under the identity of the Wen family, and would not be excluded by the rules of the immortal treasure, causing this major mistake. Chu Shanhe's eyes flashed, and he tapped the seat lightly, feeling uneasy and lustful. Chu Ruchuan, who was sitting in the audience, was extremely well-behaved at this moment. After seeing Nangong Chen kill the quasi-saint, he did not dare to say a word against him. He was afraid that the other party would come out and hear these rumors and kill him. But even so, she still felt unwilling to give up, thinking that this boy would be the biggest obstacle for her to take over the Chu family. Thinking of this, Chu Ruchuan lowered his head and clenched his hands secretly. The back mountain of Li's family. He has just entered the realm of God King, yet he has such strength, can cross the border and kill the quasi-saint directly. This boy is really not simple. After a long silence, Li Songhai slowly uttered these words. This was the first time in all these years that he had seen such a monster that shocked him to such an extent. Even the 7 gods back then had not given him such a shocking feeling. Aren't the Li family's twins geniuses? The eldest son was born with a powerful physique, breaking through the divine king level at the age of 30. The second son was even more gifted with a pupil-like physique, and had already touched the threshold of the divine king level at the age of 20. However, all these seem to be insignificant compared to the person with double pupils who suddenly appeared. If the information from the Tianji Pavilion is correct, the opponent's bone age is only 20, not even 20 years old. For ordinary cultivators, this is only the early childhood stage, just embarking on the journey of cultivation, and yet the opponent is already able to kill a quasi-saint. Even the goddess Su, who was close to him, was such a stunning person to the world. How did these 2 giant Buddhas emerge from this tiny East Shenzhou? You're quite accurate in your calculations. Li Songhai sighed and looked at his old friend who was also silent. Chapter 321. Whoever reaches out, I don't mind chopping him off. Bai Wu Dao smiled, and suddenly felt it was a bit ridiculous. Li Songhai said that his calculations were accurate, but in fact, was he really accurate? He's a piece of shit. Having only seen the tip of the iceberg of Nangong Chen's future, he vaguely deduced that Nangong Chen might be the one who breaks the deadlock in this immortal treasure hunt. But who could have imagined that he could break through the impasse in this way and fight his way out? Seeing his old friend smile, Li Songhai sighed even more that his friend's Taoism had improved a lot. Then he slowly stood up and said, "I've finished watching. In that case, it's time for me to leave for Chu City. We'll meet again in the future." After he finished speaking, he didn't even turn his head back. Very casually, turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the sky. Bai Wudao just shook his head slightly and didn't say much. He was already used to the other party's style of doing things. Then, he subconsciously stretched out his hand and made a gesture, wanting to see what the other party's luck would be like. Bai Wudao seemed to see something, opened his eyes instantly, and a chill surged into his heart. It turned out to be a fatal disaster. Palace of the Sun God. Is this what you mean, inside and outside cooperation? After seeing Wan Xin being killed by Nangong Chen, Fan Dao suppressed his smile and spoke. When Xiao Sheng, who was standing aside, had an expression beneath his black hat, as dark and gloomy as ink, extremely ugly. He really couldn't imagine that Wan Xin could die among a young man who had just become a divine king. This not only interrupted his original plan, but also made him lose face in front of Fan Dao. But even so, he still spoke in a calm tone and without any disturbance. Why rush? His death is a good thing for us. The higher his talent, the more attention the headquarters will pay to him. They will also send more manpower to support us this time to ensure that everything goes well. After he finished speaking, when Xiaosheng picked up the black card hanging around his waist, tapped it lightly with his fingertips, and a thought was transmitted into it, causing a ripple. But soon, the black card flashed with light, and when Xiaosheng's eyes flickered, as if he was receiving some information. After a few breaths, when Xiaosheng said, "Everything is as usual, and we will proceed according to the original plan. You only need to break the 7-star formation. Once you succeed, your reward and the head of the double-pupiled one will naturally fall into your hands." After hearing this, Fan Dao put away his sarcastic attitude, and his eyes were filled with fear. Even though Wan Xin was killed, the plan can still go on. What is the origin of this blood god cult? Fan Dao knew clearly that every step he took towards his force that was powerful enough to swallow up their sun god, art would affect his own life. Nangong Chen, who had made an enemy of him, was now a powerful figure in the immortal collection. He was fully fledged and could kill a quasi-saint today. Who knew if he could kill a saint in a few days? In a few days, he would probably hold a knife to his neck. For this kind of freak, all he could do was to use force and kill him completely in the cradle. Thinking of this, Fan Dao no longer hesitated and nodded, his narrow eyes revealing a fierce look. He must break the Chu family's 7-star formation. Tianyuan Divine Dynasty. Prince, you can even kill a quasi-saint now. Inside the palace, everyone looked at the projected scene in disbelief. Everyone present had reached the level of God King. They were all powerful figures in the entire Tianyuan, and they all knew very well that the gap between the quasi-saint and the God King could be described as an insurmountable chasm. But even under such circumstances, the prince could still kill. So terrifying, everyone gasped. If it weren't for the cheers outside the street that resounded through the sky, they would probably have thought they were dreaming. Wang Yuxuan and Zhou Wan'er were silent. They had just entered the realm of great power. Could their master kill a quasi-saint? Why is the gap getting bigger and bigger? Nangong Zhan took in all their expressions. A hint of pride appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he looked very happy. Damn, his own son is really too ambitious. Even his father didn't expect that the boy could even kill a quasi-saint. Although I seem to have seen that extremely dazzling sword used by the boy to break the formation before, but at that time, it was not so powerful. Compared with now, it is really nothing. However, he still had no idea where that kid got all those treasures. He had also heard the blood god cult member talk about something called the human emperor sword. Although we don't know the quality of a human emperor sword, it should be a treasure that is stronger than the immortal weapon. Even such a thing was obtained by his own son. He could even easily take out the imperial dragon vein. Well, he was not stupid. He naturally knew that his son must have some secrets, things that even he didn't know. But the truth will come out sooner or later. Taking out these treasures will naturally attract other people to snoop. Now he can help him deal with it. But what about later? Thinking of this, Nangong Zhan looked like he had a headache. What should I do if I encounter someone stronger than me? Never mind, I'll just have to wait until Nangong Chen enters the upper realm and let his mother figure out this headache. As for now, if anyone dares to lay a hand on his son, as long as he is in Xintian territory, he doesn't mind chopping off that hand. Nangong Zhan's eyes were cold as he thought to himself. At this moment, not only were the people of the entire Tianyuan Divine Dynasty boiling with excitement once again, But even the Tianyuan sword sect and several universities had countless disciples who regarded Nangong Chen as their idol and shouted his name loudly. Once upon a time, they thought that the young master of Tianyuan Mansion was an unpromising, mediocre person and a notorious playboy in the capital. Now, if you ask a child on the street, he or she will probably be able to answer questions about the prince's deeds fluently, and may even look at him or her with admiration. People didn't know why Nangong Chen had changed so much, but now they all knew that the other party was the glory of the Divine Dynasty and a legend of the Divine Dynasty. In the Northern Territory, boom, the tremendous power erupted from a military camp, frightening all the monsters within 100 miles. After feeling this pressure, the nearby soldiers quickly surrounded them, but they heard a loud laugh coming from the military camp, and then a tall figure slowly walked out. It worked. I never thought that I, Nangong Chen, could break through the quasi-saint realm at the age of 300. Ha ha, I really am a genius. That's right, it was the Northern Territory's god of death, Nangong Chen, who had just broken through to the quasi-saint level. Under normal circumstances, this would obviously be something that would boost the morale of the troops and would be extremely exciting. However, when Nangong Chen came out, the scene was exceptionally quiet. What are you looking at? Nangong Chen felt something was wrong when he saw them shaking their heads and looking at him with some contempt. So he asked hurriedly, "Are quasi-saints that powerful?" The crown prince just killed one, and it seems he was in the late quasi-saint stage. It seems to be Wan Xin, one of the four masters of the blood god cult. One of his confidants joked that it was obvious that these people had a very good relationship. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole audience burst into laughter, except for Nangong Chen, who looked confused. What? Did he hear it right? Did that kid Nangong Chen kill a quasi-saint? Or did he establish a new crown prince? But that's impossible. Soon, after Nangong Chen understood the whole story from everyone, he fell completely silent, and the joy and excitement he had shown before also disappeared. Damn, that kid can kill a quasi-saint. How old is he? Not even 20, right? Or he is in the late stage of quasi-saint. Doesn't that mean that he has been practicing like a dog for the past 300 years? Chapter 322. Restore the peak and enter the spiritual monument again. The battlefield of heaven and earth. Nangong Chen sat cross-legged in an open space, surrounded by formations. His eyes were closed, runes were wrapped around his body, and he occasionally exhaled essence. In front of him, 3 holy medicines were suspended in mid-air, emitting a hazy light. Endless spiritual energy burst out from them, turning into a fuse and being sent into Nangong Chen's body. Call. After a while, until the last holy medicine was absorbed, the paleness on Nangong Chen's face gradually faded away, and he took a deep breath. He opened his eyes were blazing, his whole body was full of energy like a dragon, and he had recovered to his peak state. Seeing this, Su Li, who was standing by, felt slightly relieved. "Thank you very much," Nangong Chen said softly. He knew that the beauty in front of him had been guarding him every moment when he was extremely weak. If the other party hadn't noticed his mistake in time, he would probably be in trouble. This time, he was indeed wrong in his prediction. He did not expect that just by slightly activating the human emperor's sword, the elixir he had prepared would be used up. It wasn't even enough, as all his spiritual energy was drained away. If he hadn't just swallowed 3 holy medicines, he wouldn't know when his spiritual energy would be fully restored. It's simply too terrifying, like a bottomless pit. Fortunately, the human emperor's sword, after being slightly activated, was indeed extraordinary. It actually exerted the power of a peak saint and directly chopped the Luanxin into pieces without leaving any residue. This really surprised him. He calculated that this sword cost him 1 immortal medicine and 3 holy medicines, which was not a small amount. Although he will have many holy medicines in the future, they're still in the future. As the Yuanling monument is in the first tier, the more than 90 precious medicines will need 50 years to mature. It was a blessing for him to die under the sword of the human emperor. Nangong Chen thought to himself and shook his head. After hearing Nangong Chen's thanks, Su Li rolled her eyes at him in annoyance with her beautiful face. This was the first time she had seen someone exhaust their spiritual energy to this extent. She even tried to continuously transfer her own spiritual energy to the other party as soon as she discovered it, but it was of no avail. The other party's spiritual sea was still like a bottomless pit, constantly devouring. She was somewhat relieved that she discovered early. If she had discovered it a little later, Nangong Chen would probably have collapsed from exhaustion. But even so, Su Li did not blame Nangong Chen for what he did, but was a little angry why he didn't tell her first. Seeing that she looked a little angry, Nangong Chen couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth slightly. "I was careless this time, and it won't happen again next time." He shook his head and spoke with great confidence. After knowing the consumption required by the human emperor's sword at his current stage, everything became controllable. But he felt a little pained. The immortal medicines he had inherited and rewarded from the Xianxian sect before only added up to 4, and now there were only 3 left. In other words, he had 3 chances to use the peak Sword of Saint. As for the holy medicine, there are only 10 left. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but move his mind and entered the Tianyuan Lingbei. I saw that nearly 90 precious medicines were standing in the air, constantly absorbing the essence of the fairy night and gradually transforming into holy medicines. But it's still too slow. Although there are some changes compared to the last time I came in, they are still insignificant. Nangong Chen observed carefully. Soon, he thought of something, reached out his hand, and took out the fairy crystals he had recently obtained. There were a total of 500 fairy crystals, a considerable number like a ray of light, circling in the dome, extremely dazzling. If he remembered correctly, he was only 500 immortal liquids away from unlocking the next level of the Tianyuan spiritual monument. Shua! The moment the fairy crystal was taken out, a figure rushed out. He had long eyebrows, a short stature, and the corners of his mouth could not stop rising, as if crystal liquid was about to flow out of it. Hey kid, it seems like you've become rich again recently. In just a few months, you've been able to produce so many immortal crystals. Not bad. The old man stared at the gorgeous fairy crystals in the sky, wiped his saliva, and nodded with satisfaction. When Nangong Chen saw that after wiping his saliva, he actually wanted to pat his shoulder, he frowned slightly and took a few steps back without saying a word, leaving the old man empty-handed. Are you that ginseng? Nangong Chen looked at it for a while and asked in a low voice. There was no other reason. The ginseng's upside-down white eyebrows were exactly the same as the person in front of him, which left an extremely deep impression on him. Seeing that he was dodged, the old man did not feel embarrassed. He nodded generously and said, "It's me. Also, I'm not called that ginseng. Thanks to your immortality liquid, I've recovered some of my memories. If possible, you can call me Elder Ginseng. As for what memories I have revived, I have to start from the beginning." Seeing that the other party was about to start a long speech, Nangong Chen interrupted him without mercy and said lightly, "That person, Elder Shun, please convert these 500 immortal crystals into immortal spirit liquid. As for the rest, we can talk about it next time." He did not forget that the top 10 in the immortal treasure had to enter the Temple of Inheritance to receive the inheritance, and, as the first one, he naturally could not be absent. Moreover, the inheritance of Taoism is of vital importance to him and is also the purpose of his trip. After hearing this, Elder Shun transformed the immortal crystal into immortal spirit liquid with one hand and looked towards the sky not far away with a cheerful look and said thoughtfully, "Regarding how the world tree sapling can help you cultivate, don't you want to know?" The direction he was looking at was exactly in the center of the spiritual sea, where an emerald green sapling was blooming with divine mist and emitting surging vitality. And all the precious medicines around it did not dare to approach it. They seemed to be alive, hiding humbly in the corner and trembling. Nangong Chen's pupils shrank when he saw this. He didn't expect that the world tree sapling he threw here some time ago had already dominated the Tianyuan spiritual monument in just a few days. He knew how domineering these indigenous people were before. However, Elder Chan's words made him even more speechless. He knew almost nothing about the world tree sapling, let alone how to use it for cultivation. Now that the other party knew about it, it was extremely important to him. But the most urgent thing is that there are more important things waiting for him, so he has to go out. Thinking of this, Nangong Chen looked hesitant and was about to explain something when he was interrupted by Master Chan. "Forget it. Since you have something important to do, there's no need to rush. When you are free, you can come to me anytime. I've already converted 500 immortal crystals for you, which adds up to 10,000 drops of immortal fluid, breaking through the second stage of the spiritual monument. You can go without worry." Mr. Shun waved his hand and smiled. "Yes, thank you." Upon hearing this, Nangong Chen felt relieved, bowed, and then his mind withdrew from here. Chapter 323, Immortal Treasure Ranking. Now, let's announce the final ranking of this immortal treasure. What is the overall ranking? It's the combination of your performance in the first and second rounds of trials to create the final ranking. The top 10 in this ranking can enter the Heritage Temple. Those with extraordinary qualifications can leave their names on the Myriad Worlds list. On the stage, the Star Envoy held a golden silk curtain in his hand and spoke silently, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Inscribed on that golden scroll were the rankings of all the geniuses in this immortal collection. At this moment, the whole place was silent. All the geniuses looked at the gilded scroll with burning eyes, their hearts restless. They have waited too long for this moment. The fighting over the past 2 months was all for the purpose of surviving to the end in Xianzong and having one's name written in the Gilded Scroll. As for being engraved on the list of all worlds and having their name passed down through the ages, that was something they would never dare to imagine. Every name on the Myriad Worlds list is a monster-like evildoer from countless eras. Even the last 100 geniuses are enough to dominate every domain and suppress all the young generations of the contemporary era. If you could be included in it and become one of the ones on the list, I don't know what an honor it would be. The whole domain should be proud of you. This is also the greatest wish of every genius who enters the immortal treasure. Thinking of this, some people couldn't help but look at the ancient monument standing on the other side of deep space, running through the sky and the earth, bringing people an indescribable majestic atmosphere. As for those whose names were on the list, their handwriting was sharp, with a momentum that made them compete with the sky. Just by taking a glance, you can seem to see the peerless figures of every evildoer in different eras. There's a young man in battle clothes with blood and vigor, standing with his hands behind his back, stepping on a bronze tripod, with the momentum of a dragon. Behind him were the followers of that era, all kneeling on one knee with fiery expressions on their faces. It was an extreme form of worship. When Lu Dezhu and others saw this, their pupils shrank, and they were a little bit unbelievable. And there is also a young man in ancient clothes who can break the sky with a sword, standing on the top of the mountain, with silent eyes, seeking defeat alone. Just the slightest bit of sword energy made all the geniuses present retreat. Their faces changed drastically, as if their necks were placed on a cold sword, and the opponent could kill them in a moment. These peerless monsters who once shone through the ages now seemed to have come alive and reappeared in the minds of everyone present. Are these all those whose names remain on the Myriad Worlds list? Someone murmured to himself, his eyes shocked, unable to believe that this was just the oppressive feeling of a handwriting left by the other party. The three top evildoers, Fuzi, Hu Yaoyao, and Xian Xiangling, couldn't help but breathe faster after seeing this scene. It is no wonder that for countless epochs, so many monsters have wanted to leave their names on the list of all realms, fighting each other in the immortal treasures, and it turns out that there is such a heaven-defying effect. Leave your name through the ages, project your shadow, shock the ancient and modern times, and be respected by all 10 domains. No matter which one it is a reason that cannot be refused, not to mention that all these are added to the 10,000 worlds list. Cough. Following a light cough from the Star Envoy, everyone turned their attention back to the arena. Seeing this, the Star Envoy nodded slightly and spoke slowly. Number 39, Lu Dezhu of Xiantian Territory. Number 38, Demon Realm, Tiger Bawei. Number 37, High Sandfoam of the Sea Area. As the rankings were announced one after another, some of the geniuses present were happy while others were sad. Haha, I never thought that even though I wasn't in the top 30 in the first round, I'd actually make it into the top 20 overall. I'm so lucky. Huh? Why am I only ranked 34th? I clearly remember that I was ranked over 20th in the first round. This second round of trials actually delayed me so much. Damn it. Still 25, staying put cool. And soon, the top 10 were announced. The noisy voices at the scene suddenly quieted down a lot. Everyone wanted to see which geniuses would finally enter the Temple of Inheritance. 10th place, Xiantian Domain, Chao Li. 9th place, Xiantian Territory, Chu Yen. 8th place, Li Muxiu from Xiantian Territory. As the first few voices fell, Li Muxiu, Chao Li, and Chu Yen were stunned for a moment, with excited expressions on their faces. Even the people around them were a little surprised. They didn't expect that they who drew bad lots in the second round could actually make it into the top 10 in the end. Am I dreaming? Chao Li slapped himself and said in disbelief. Before coming to this immortal treasure, his goal was to get into the top 100, but now he was told that he was actually in the top 10. It felt like a supreme opportunity suddenly fell on my head one day. Chu Yan's lips opened slightly. She also couldn't believe it. She still remembered that she was only ranked in the top 10 in the first round, but she suddenly made it into the top 10? This is too dreamy. Li Muxiu's expression was much calmer, but if it weren't for his trembling legs, he would have been fooled. Hey, don't you think about why you can get in? At this moment, Lu Dezhu spoke with a hint of deep meaning. The three looked over confused. Yes, it's because of them. Lu Dazhui tilted his head and quietly looked at a pair of peerless and beautiful lovers who appeared not far away at some point in time. Those two people were Nangong Chen and Su Li. After seeing the two of them, Chao Li slapped his head again, as if he had realized something belatedly, and said, "Fuck, how could I have forgotten? If it weren't for Brother Nangong's opponents being beaten to a pulp every time, how could we have easily made it into the top 10? Li Muxiu also looked enlightened, and he figured it out all of a sudden. Hai Wuhan, Xian Jie, and the unstoppable Wan Exine, their top 10 competitors, were all killed by Brother Nangong. I'm afraid that only the other party can kill 3 people so fiercely in this kind of competition system. Thinking of this, Li Muxiu smiled bitterly. This time I owe you a huge favor. Chu Yan's beautiful eyes also shone brightly as she looked at the figure in white, but soon a hint of sadness flashed in the depths of her eyes. Chapter 324. First on the Myriad Realms list, announcement of the 10 realms. At this moment, the top 10 list continues to be announced. Unexpectedly, Li Qixin took 6th place, while Jiang Yingyue ranked 5th. This shocked many people, who secretly lamented the abundance of talented people in Xintian domain. The Buddhist disciple fell into 4th place, which made him feel extremely complicated for a moment, not knowing whether to be excited or relieved. I, a dignified twin Buddha, have fallen to this point, needing to rely on others to get to 4th place. If Xuanjie and Luanxin were here, he would definitely not be able to get 4th place. 3rd place, Fox Yaoyao from the Demon Realm. As this voice fell, Hu Yaoyao's expression became a little complicated. She looked at Nangong Chen with her beautiful eyes, wondering what he was thinking. At the same time, Hu Yaoyao reached the 90th place on the Myriad Realms ranking. With the deity's stature, she can leave her name on the list. Then, the Star Envoy continued, and with a flick of his sleeves, he turned into a stream of light and fell into the stone tablet that penetrated the sky and the earth. The Wanjia ranking took notice and moved the 40th place back, leaving an empty tablet. After he finished speaking, all the geniuses looked at him in shock, and they all looked towards Hu Yaoyao. Hu Yaoyao was stunned for a long time, her golden hair cascading down her shoulders like a waterfall, like a bright sun. Can I also enter the Myriad Worlds ranking? Hu Yaoyao was stunned, with confusion in her eyes. But soon, she came to her senses and moved lightly with lotus steps. Her white jade feet stepped into the air, and her pair of soft orange fox ears were very dazzling, standing tall. Hu Yaoyao stretched out her slender arm and lightly stroked with her fingertips. In the blink of an eye, a line of beautiful handwriting was left on the list of all worlds. At this moment, everyone looked at the line of words, as if the monstrous evil spirit was about to burst out, and a 9-tailed fox was stepping on the sky, and all the monsters surrendered. When Yao Yu and others saw this scene, they were also extremely excited and shouted the princess's name. The princess is so talented, she is worthy of being the bloodline that has appeared in my demon realm for 10,000 years. Yes, the first time I entered the fairyland, I entered the 40th place on the Myriad Realms ranking. If I wait for the princess to grow up for a few years and try again, I think I will have a chance to break into the top 20. Although I don't know what level of cultivation a god has, it must be a realm that I dare not even imagine. The sounds were deafening and resounded through the sky. This also made other geniuses extremely envious, and they wished they were the ones whose names were engraved. But this is just wishful thinking. Soon, after Hu Yaoyao left her name, the Star Envoy nodded slightly and continued to announce the rest of the list. Seeing this, everyone fell silent. They knew that the next big thing was coming. I don't know how high those 2 monsters can get on the Myriad Worlds ranking. Top 20 or even top 10. As for going any higher, they simply couldn't even think about it. You know, the Star Envoy said before that those who made it into the top 100 of the Myriad Realms ranking had the stature of gods, while the top 10 were supreme beings. And as for the top 3, they were immortals, gods, supreme beings, immortals. Any one of them is an existence that we dare not even think about. 2nd place, Xintian Territory, Su Li. At the same time, you have reached the 2nd place on the Myriad Worlds ranking. You are ready to become an immortal and leave your name on the list. As Xingqian finished his 2 sentences, the whole audience fell silent. Everyone opened their eyes wide, breathing faster and faster, looking at the beautiful silver-haired figure, somewhat incredulous. 2nd on the Myriad Realms ranking? Immortal-like? This woman actually has the potential to become an immortal. Did they hear it right? At this time, even Hu Yaoyao, who had just ranked 40th on the Myriad Worlds ranking, couldn't help but fall silent. The corners of his mouth became increasingly bitter, and the joy he had just felt disappeared in an instant. Witnessed by everyone, Su Li's pretty face was calm, her silver hair fluttered, her figure was graceful, and she was as elegant as a fairy in the snow. Soon, he arrived in front of the Myriad Worlds list. His crystal-clear arm gently extended, and the word Su Li was engraved on the Myriad Worlds list. The handwriting is beautiful, and there's an extreme coldness between the lines. It seemed that everyone could see the ice phoenix in the snow, soaring in the sky with its wings spread, looking down at all living beings. This is even more terrifying than the oppressive feeling brought by the 9-tailed fox just now. Congratulations. Seeing Su Li coming back, Nangong Chen raised his eyebrows slightly and praised her. She is worthy of being the destined heroine. If it weren't for me, I'm afraid she would have already ranked first on a list of all realms. Suli shook her head. She didn't like the feeling of being stared at by so many people. On the contrary, she liked watching Nangong Chen being the center of attention. As for becoming an immortal, she cared about it a lot in the beginning, but after she had someone she cared about, it didn't seem so important anymore. It's your turn. She thought for a moment and then whispered. At the same time, the star envoy also nodded slightly, stood in the center of the arena, coughed lightly, and said loudly, "The first place in this immortal treasure is Nangong Chen from Tianyuan realm. To reach the top of the 10,000 realms list, you can leave your name on the 10,000 realms list, become an immortal, and announce it to the 10 realms." As soon as he finished speaking, a brilliant immortal light burst out from the top of the myriad worlds ranking, illuminating the entire starry sky. At the same time, purple air came from the east, and 5-color divine lights intertwined, as if they were all congratulating Nangong Chen on reaching the top of the 10,000 realms list. At this moment, everything was silent, the world was silent, and the eyes of everyone present were focused on the peerless white robe. If the second place that Suli won previously was just an appetizer, then Nangong Chen's current top spot on the 10,000 worlds list could be considered a true king bomb. Nangong Chen was seen dressed in a peerless white robe, as white as snow, with a calm expression. As he walked with the Qilin steps, a golden staircase illuminated the sky and appeared out of nowhere. Nangong Chen's eyes narrowed. He was a little surprised, but he didn't think much about it, and stepped onto the golden steps. What is that? Looking at the Emperor's Avenue that appeared out of thin air, everyone's face was filled with shock, and their pupils suddenly shrank. And at the end of the Golden Avenue, there is actually a throne standing in the sky. The throne was extremely magnificent, with golden dragon runes carved on it, the backrest towering into the clouds, and red divine light flowing around it. The overwhelming pressure was as if a king had truly descended here. This sudden change caught everyone by surprise. Even the star envoy was looking at Nangong Chen in astonishment. He hadn't remembered that, after reaching the top of the myriad worlds ranking, there was actually such a thing. This also alarmed Ji-Feng. He saw a child's figure quietly descending in the void where no one could see. Ji-Feng stood with his hands behind his back. Watching this scene, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he muttered to himself, "I knew this myriad worlds ranking was no ordinary thing." It actually resonated with that kid's human emperor sword. It seems it must have been born in that era. Soon, another beautiful figure as brilliant as fire quietly appeared. It was Qi Yao. She looked at this scene, also secretly amazed, and said, "I didn't expect that you, the number one on the myriad worlds ranking, would have such a ceremony. TSK, TSK, TSK. Where did you get that throne? It's so majestic. Let me sit on it someday." After hearing this, Ji-Feng was so upset that he didn't know how to answer the woman next to him. At this moment, among the 10 domains, the burial sky domain, the wild domain, the sea domain, the demon domain, etc., countless creatures were looking at the sudden scene in the sky. "Who is that? He's going to take the throne?" Someone said with a trembling voice, his face shocked. That extremely powerful aura was enough to make these creatures' hearts and minds agitated and terrified, and they thought it was divine punishment from heaven. Some creatures even knelt on the ground, praying to God not to show his anger. And when they looked at the figure in snow clothes standing on the Golden Avenue, they worshipped him as a god and kowtowed to him one after another. That young and indifferent face was deeply imprinted in their minds at this moment, and could not be erased. Chapter 325, 10 Realms Shocked, named on the 10,000 Realms list. At the same time, in the Tianyuan realm, all living beings were looking at the strange phenomenon that suddenly appeared in the sky. Although they had expected it, they still couldn't contain their excitement when they actually saw it. The reason is simple. The young man who is climbing to the top is the pride of their Tianyuan domain. Their eyes were no longer focused on the narrow spiritual realm, but were all fixed on the sky. They wanted to see the young man reach the top and sit on the throne. At this moment, the monks from the 3 continents were boiling with excitement, as if a spark was ignited, erupting into a raging fire, burning the sky. The flames seemed to devour all the shame of their Tianyuan realm since ancient times, and to release their emotions without reservation. Who said that our Tianyuan territory's prodigies are incompetent? Who said that our Tianyuan territory's prodigies are in a period of transition? Yes, the 9 realms laughed at us for never having anyone in the top 10 of the immortal treasures, and very few people making it onto the myriad realms ranking. Now, they're opening their eyes wide to see how someone with double pupils managed to reach the top of the myriad realms ranking. Oh my god, I feel like I'm dreaming. In our Tianyuan territory, there are actually such stunning monsters, and 2 of them appeared at once. Some people sobbed, some roared to the sky, and some even cried with joy. There has never been such a person in Tianyuan realm. Such an extremely monstrous genius. The appearance of Nangong Chen and Su Li brought them from the abyss into the light, allowing them to see that the human race could have such a bright future. Instead of being inherently behind other races, we should allow them to bully and ridicule us. Some people who saw this scene were also deeply moved. They thought that this was probably the only time that the three continents could be unified like this. In the Tianyuan Divine Dynasty, the streets and alleys were crowded with people. Looking at the snow-clad figure in the sky, their emotions were even more excited than anyone else. The deafening shouts spread out like ripples, centered on the Divine Dynasty. Even further north, the forces that had recently been forcibly expropriated as territory by the Tianyuan Divine Dynasty were filled with fear and submission when they learned that the young man in the sky was the prince of the Divine Dynasty. Their original dissatisfaction was also blown away by the wind. The young man's performance in the immortal treasure was simply monstrous. What could they use to resist? It would be better to surrender directly. Under the leadership of such a genius, they believe that their lives will definitely be better than before. This sudden change in attitude also made the 8 generals sigh. They looked at the young man in the sky with some indescribable emotions. Who could have imagined that the young master who led them to fight against Prince Ao Long that day had become a world-famous person with double pupils, and the reputation he exuded was even more useful than that of them, the quasi-saints. With a genius like the young master leading us, there's no reason why Tianyuan won't prosper. An old general sighed, his armor flashing with cold light. Old Bai, I've already mentioned the prince. How come you still can't remember, huh? A burly man next to him, also wearing armor, patted him on the shoulder and said with a laugh. At this moment, on the battlefield of heaven and earth, under the gazes of countless people, Nangong Chen finally arrived in front of the myriad worlds list. He looked at the dark, ancient monument in front of him, took a deep breath, and slowly raised his sword. Under the sweep of sword energy, 3 large characters in a flamboyant style were already carved on the stone tablet. After Nangong Chen left his name, 7-colored divine light bloomed from the stone tablet, and shadows of dragons and phoenixes rushed out from it, circling in the sky. Everyone present was stunned when they looked at the line of domineering words. They seemed to see a being standing in the 9 heavens and 10 domains, wearing white snow-white clothes and standing with his hands behind his back. Under him, all living beings bowed down to him. What a majestic figure it is. Dragons and phoenixes bow to it, and even gods bow down to it. Seeing this scene, even Ji Feng and Shi Yao, who were watching, couldn't help but look serious, and they no longer had the playful smiles they had before. The reason is simple. They felt the imperial aura. After leaving his name on the myriad worlds list, the divine light on the throne became brighter, and the runes flickered, as if waiting for Nangong Chen to take a seat. After Nangong Chen reached the top, the overwhelming imperial energy transformed into a dazzling golden dragon surrounding his body. Everyone saw this scene, and the shock in their hearts was beyond words. How could they not know that it was the supreme throne extending an invitation to Nangong Chen, eager for him to take his seat? At this moment, all the creatures in the 10 realms held their breath and dared not blink at all, for fear of missing this shocking scene. Some powerful people from other domains also realized why this strange phenomenon appeared, and their eyes were filled with horror. Number 1 on the myriad worlds rankings. This position has remained unchanged for many years. I never thought that a genius would be able to leave his name in this class. Who is he? Is he Xuanjie from the God Clan? Why does he present himself as a human? He's so secretive and will never achieve anything great. It's impossible that they're the Buddha's disciples from the Buddha realm or the foxes from the demon realm. Their auras are completely different from this. Just when they were at a loss, someone soon found the young man's information. He's not from the burial heaven realm, nor the Buddha realm, but rather the demon realm. This person is the pride of the mysterious heaven realm. An aquatic creature held the chart of all worlds in his hand and spoke tremblingly. As soon as these words came out, these foreign warriors were stunned on the spot. They must have heard it right. Xiantian territory? One ancient word. If the other party hadn't reminded them, they would have almost forgotten the existence of this territory. There's no way. The human race has neither innate advantages nor racial talents. Over the past tens of millions of years, its performance in the immortal treasures has been mediocre, and it is no longer worthy of their attention. Even the top 10 or top 20 immortal treasures have mostly been occupied by their 9 domains in recent years. It can be said that they're extremely powerful, and it was under such circumstances that the insignificant Xiantian territory actually gave birth to a genius who ranked number 1 on the myriad realms ranking. This is simply unbelievable and terrifying when you think about it carefully. Oh my God, he is truly a human genius. The powerful foreign warriors were stunned, all looking at the young man in the sky with horror on their faces. They thought that the other party showed such an appearance because he was afraid to reveal his race, so he presented himself as a human, but they did not expect that the other party was really a human. How is this possible? The human race must have used other means to reach the top by chance. How could their Tianyuan realm possibly have a monster ranked first on the Myriad Realms ranking? Someone from Mongyu, which had always been at odds with Tianyuan, started cursing loudly with red eyes. As soon as the words fell, they caused a huge uproar, and more creatures from other domains echoed them, as if they had found their backbone. Yes, how could a genius from the human race reach the top of the Myriad Realms ranking? There must be something wrong with this immortal treasure. I've heard that the immortal treasure is controlled by a force from the Tianyuan territory. They must have used some unknown means. Damn human beings, they're so evil. Chapter 326. 9 Regions' Dirty Tricks. Tianyuan is furious. Seeing that everyone was provoked by his few words, a giant with a ferocious face in the wilderness also showed a happy smile. You despicable human race genius. You actually want to use us to establish your authority? You are really dreaming. If that's the case, then I might as well break your Tao heart and destroy your race's genius. Wan Ping thought to himself, his eyes becoming increasingly cold. At this moment, more and more people in the 9 realms were questioning whether the human race must have used some unknown means to take first place on the Myriad Realms list. Otherwise, how can an unknown kid reach the top position? Over in the Burial Heaven realm, several gods stood indifferently, watching coldly, with an unknown fire burning fiercely. Xian Jie actually lost to a human genius. How is this possible? Something must have happened during this immortal hiding that they were unaware of. If I wait until Xuan Jie comes back, I will definitely ask him clearly. At this moment, in the battlefield of heaven and earth, the noisy voices from the 9 realms also poured into it. How could human beings sit on the throne? Get down from here. Yeah, a despicable race wants to dominate us. What a joke. Upon hearing this, the expressions of the geniuses present were complicated. They looked at the figure in snow-white clothes on the long golden steps, not knowing what to say. After the Star Envoy announced the 10 domains, they could clearly see through the boundary wall of the battlefield between heaven and earth and take in the situation in other domains. They also saw the expressions of those in the 9 realms, but they didn't say anything about it. At this moment, only the geniuses of Tianyuan domain were indignant and stood up for Nangong Chen. These people are so clueless. The giant from the wild territory just provoked them with a few words, and they fell for it. Chowli gritted his teeth. He also saw the current situation clearly. Yes, the first place in the 10,000 worlds list has been determined. No matter how unwilling they are, they have to admit it. Wang Tong said coldly, his face full of coldness. Brother Nangong is so pitiful. I never thought that, even after taking first place on the Myriad Realms ranking, he would be questioned by these people. Xiong scratched his head and looked at the figure standing on the top of the mountain with a look of pity on his face. Li Qixin sighed and said helplessly, it would be fine if Brother Nangong ignored them, but if these people disturb our Tao, they will succeed. But they are so arrogant. It makes me want to give them a slap in the face. After saying this, Li Qixin clenched his fists, his expression very cold. At this moment, the ones who were even more angry than them were the cultivators from the 3 states in Tianyuan realm. These people's curses were so harsh that they even wanted Nangong Chen to get off the throne and let the geniuses from other domains sit on the throne. The giants over there actually had their eyes on the other side, and declared that they wanted to taste the flesh and blood of the number 1 on the Myriad Worlds list. As soon as these words were spoken, there were actually races in the 9 realms who cheered for them. You must know that some domains are behind the Tianyuan domain. Logically, they have no blood feud with the Tianyuan domain, nor do they have any competition in the immortal treasures. But even with such a relationship, the other party still wanted to take advantage of the situation. This also made them feel a little disheartened. If that bastard from Mang territory dares to come to our Tianyuan territory, I will chop off his head. In the void, Qi Yin couldn't bear to watch any longer and said in a cold voice. He was originally Nangong Chen's protector and was not allowed to show up at will. Now, hearing these unknown creatures slandering Nangong Chen, he felt even more furious. They all knew that if it weren't for a giant from the wild realm instigating the 9 realms, how could so many creatures follow suit? They're even throwing dirty water on them for no reason. For a moment, when the monks from the 3 states heard their slander, even those who were not supporters of the person with double pupils, they all angrily scolded them back. It doesn't matter what, this is already related to the reputation of the human race in Tianyuan domain. Not to mention the supporters of those people with double pupils, who would like to kill 1,000 souls who slander those people with double pupils. Do you from other domains think you are worthy of sitting on the throne and coveting the top spot on the Myriad Realms ranking? Do you know what a rotten state your geniuses have become in the immortal treasures? It's so funny. You poor people have no idea what's going on in Xinzong. You just blindly follow the crowd. Little do you know that your geniuses are almost dead. Alas, so many of you have died, so we should give you some time and let you have some fun with your words. After all, this is the only thing you can do. As soon as these words were spoken, the regions that had been shouting the loudest fell silent. They were indeed right. They really didn't know what was going on. But, judging from their tone, could it be that these people from the Tianyuan realm all know what happened inside the immortal treasure? How is this possible? Isn't Xinzong independent of its own world? How can they see it? When the giant Wan Ping heard this, he just sneered and casually swallowed a few human blood food in front of them. He chewed out the blood, revealing his scarlet-yellow teeth, and grinned. You reptiles, I knew it. You really did use some unknown tricks to cheat in the immortal treasures, which is why that little bastard took first place on a myriad realms ranking. After hearing this, the creatures from other domains also looked enlightened and shocked. They didn't expect that the Xintian domain was really cheating behind the scenes. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone in Xintian domain felt extremely aggrieved. They had not expected that the giants were so good at sophistry, and instead allowed the other party to slander them. Seeing the other party's reaction, the giant named Wan Ping became more and more arrogant, and even crazily devoured the flesh and blood of the captive humans in public. This behavior also made some creatures of the giant tribe applaud and follow suit. By the way, the one who just said he wanted to chop off my head, you can come over here. I'm waiting for you to chop me off, ha ha ha. Wan Ping pointed at Qi Yin through the wall and laughed arrogantly. He could see that the other party's murderous reaction just now must have something to do with the little beast who was ranked first on the Myriad Worlds list. In this case, he would severely humiliate the other party. Although he is only a quasi-saint and far less powerful than the other party, he dares to mock the other party without fear, so he naturally has some confidence. In the final analysis, he didn't believe that the other party would really come over, and even if he did, he couldn't kill him. Who in the entire Mongyu would dare to attack him now? What others don't know is that he is the biological father of Wan Tiansheng, the contemporary monster in Mongyu. He has a very high status among the giants. Even if someone attacks him, there will be a bunch of strong people to protect him. When Qi Yun heard this, his usually gentle face turned red, veins bulged on his forehead, and he took out his longbow and shot an arrow into the air. However, when the arrow of light touched the boundary wall, it was like hitting a solid wall of iron and steel, and it fell directly to the ground with a clang. After seeing this scene, Wan Ping was stunned for a moment. Then he patted his chest and laughed heartily, revealing a hint of mockery. That's it. Chapter 327, He Killed Them All. Seeing this scene, the cultivators in Xintian realm became even more angry, clenched their fists, and wished they could tear that arrogant face to pieces. If they really reached the wild area, that arrow would have pierced the opponent long ago. But now they are only separated by a projection, so let alone killing each other, they can't even cause any damage. I could only watch the other party mocking me, but I was powerless to do anything. Qi Yin also suppressed his anger and stared at Wan Ping's figure. If the other party was in Xintian territory, he would probably be killed by a single arrow, so how could he be allowed to speak so arrogantly? But soon, Qi Yin seemed to have thought of something. His expression gradually calmed down, with a hint of sneer on the corner of his mouth. If you have eyes, why not take a look at where your tribe's genius is? He did not forget that all the geniuses in Mongyu died in the first round of trials, and were killed by the young master. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of everyone in Xintian domain instantly became interesting, as if they remembered something. Wan Ping sneered when he heard this. Where else could the geniuses of their Mongyu be? Aren't they all in that immortal treasure house? Although he didn't see his son when he just glanced over, he would never believe that Tiansheng would get into trouble in the immortal treasure. The monstrousness of his own son is obvious to all in the whole wild realm. Even if he is not as top-notch as the gods, he is at least in the top 5 in the entire immortal treasure. Thinking of this, he leisurely turned his gaze to the projection on the sky, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. He would like to ask later how many human geniuses his son has killed in the immortal treasure. Ha! At the same time, the powerful gods in the burial sky realm, the golden Buddha in the extreme sky Buddha realm, and the emperor in the sea area all slowly shifted their gazes from Xintian realm and others to look at the sky. The farce just now was just for show. What was most important was what the monsters under his command gained from this immortal treasure trove. Soon, someone noticed something was wrong. Why is it that at the end of this immortal collection, there are only about 40 people left? Where are the others? Some people in the wild territory frowned because they still had not seen the figures of Wan Tiansheng and others. In the burial sky domain, the powerful gods were also a little surprised. They did see the geniuses of the gods, but why were there only 3 of them? One of the strong men fixed his eyes on Xianhong and asked in a deep voice, Xianhong, Where are the Son of God and the others? Why haven't they come out yet? Across the sky, Xinhong's face turned pale after hearing the words. He raised his hand, tremblingly, and pointed at the snow-clad figure on the Golden Avenue. On the other side, in the Buddha realm, an Arhat named Lane also frowned slightly, looked at the remaining Buddhist disciples, and said, "Where are the others? Why are you the only one left?" The Buddhist disciple clenched his fists, remained silent for a moment, his eyes reddened, and gritted his teeth as he said, "They're all dead. Dead." Lane Arhat's expression changed drastically, as if struck by lightning, as if he had heard something unbelievable. How could they die? In previous immortal treasures, even if there were deaths, there were only 3 or 2 people. How could so many people die this time? Who killed him? Lane Arhat's face was as gloomy as dead water, and he said in a deep voice that he knew that it was impossible for so many people to die in just 2 rounds of trials. Someone must be targeting their Buddha realm. Upon hearing this, the Buddhist disciple looked at him with resentment, raised his finger, and pointed at the calm figure in snow-white clothes in the sky. On the other side of the wild territory, Wanping opened his eyes wide and searched the entire battlefield thoroughly, but he didn't see even a single giant figure. He panicked, with a sense of foreboding in his heart. He looked at the remaining geniuses on the battlefield and asked, "Why are there so few people? Where are the Tianjiao of our clan? Where are Wan Tiansheng and the others? Tell me where they are." After he finished speaking, Li Qixin and others just glanced at him, snorted coldly, and did not respond. They originally wanted to say directly that they were killed by Brother Nangong, but after thinking about it, they chose to remain silent. If they say that he was killed by Brother Nangong, even though the other party is a genius, he can't withstand the pursuit of an entire domain. Wouldn't they be harming the other party if they say it out loud? After seeing this scene, Wanping felt extremely uneasy. He turned to look at the geniuses from other domains, eager to know the answer. However, in the demon realm, Hu Yaoyao also gave him a cold look and said, "As you can see, the remaining geniuses present are the ones who survived. As for the others, they died long ago." As soon as these words fell, the illusions of those from other domains were instantly shattered. They had thought that so many people were not present because they were still participating in the trial. But Hu Yaoyao told them directly and ruthlessly that their people had died long ago and they should stop daydreaming. For a moment, except for the demon realm, the remaining 8 realms were furious. Those creatures were furious and wanted to know who killed them and what exactly happened in the immortal treasure. And after Wanping knew that all the geniuses in Manyu were dead, he staggered and his mountain-like body fell to the ground in an instant, his eyelids trembling. How is this possible? How can my son die? He is the most powerful genius in the history of the wild territory. Who did this? He roared to the sky, and the other giants beside him also had cold eyes and were burning with anger. They swore that they would find that person and make that domain pay for its blood debt with blood. In an instant, the creatures of the 8 realms were in chaos, looking at the remaining geniuses in the battlefield of heaven and earth with red eyes. When the people in Xintian territory saw this, they all looked at each other coldly and said nothing. They watched the entire process of Xianzong and naturally knew who killed him. Apart from the geniuses killed by Luanxin and Liang Gui in the first round of hunting, the rest were almost all killed in the formation of the one with double pupils. However, they're not fools and did not mention it at this moment. If they did, wouldn't it bring hatred to their own genius? However, soon, under the pressure of the Emperor in the sea area, the few remaining Sea Clan geniuses in the battlefield of heaven and earth also fell to their knees. Looking at the snow-clad figure on the golden avenue in the sky, their voices trembled. It was him. That devil killed them all. He's a killer. Everyone died at his hands. As soon as he finished speaking, countless sharp gazes focused on the young man on the golden avenue. Boom! Boom! At some point, as the noise subsided, the sound of footsteps from the sky, like the beating of war drums, resounded clearly in everyone's ears. Everyone was shocked and looked up at the person who made the sound. Chapter 328, I am here today, and I will take them all. The young man was wearing a snow-white robe. He had walked down the long steps of the Imperial Road without anyone noticing. In full view of everyone, he turned around and sat naturally on the throne. The moment he sat down, a blinding divine light shot up from the bottom of the throne to the dome. Wherever the light reached, the sun and the moon rose and fell, and the sky and the earth became dim. At the same time, the young man slowly stretched out his hand, and his slender and bony fingers lightly placed on the dragon armrest. Suddenly, an overwhelming momentum roared past. The dragons are flying and destroying everything in their path. At this moment, the world was silent, as if shocked by an invisible force. Under the dome light, the stern face slowly opened its eyes, revealing the eyes that made the heaven and earth fear. After seeing those eyes clearly, everyone present couldn't help but shrink their pupils and their minds went blank in an instant. What kind of eyes were those? The pupils overlapped, the runes intertwined, the eyes were blazing, and an astonishing beam of light burst out when they opened and closed. Just by taking a look at it, I felt as if my soul was about to be devoured by it, and I had no desire to resist at all. It was as if the figure in snow clothes, sitting on the throne at this moment, was a true king. At this moment, the terrifying pressure like a flood poured out without reservation, sweeping across the entire 10 domains. Dead silence. All the creatures in the 10 realms were stunned. No one dared to say a word, and they stared blankly at the figure on the sky curtain. Even they themselves did not expect that at this moment. They had subconsciously become the other party's subjects, as if no one dared to challenge the king's majesty unless he spoke. At this moment, a cold voice suddenly sounded like thunder from the ground, resounding in the ears of every living being present. That's right, I killed all your geniuses. Sitting on the throne, Nangong Chen looked around with disdainful eyes and a calm tone, as if he was narrating something very ordinary. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's pupils shrank slightly. Then, Nangong Chen looked at the group of arrogant giants again, raised his eyebrows, revealed a hint of teasing, and said condescendingly, "Oh, especially you giants. I killed every one of them with my own hands." Even before the corpses were cold, wild monsters on the roadside would come over to take a bite. Upon hearing this, all the creatures present trembled physically and mentally. They could never imagine how that young human could speak such cruel words in such a calm tone. After hearing the news, Wan Ping's face turned pale, his eyes were white, and his body staggered. His son really died. He really died at the hands of those humans. The group of giants on the side were even more furious. Their eyes were red, and the piercing, murderous intent that soared into the sky made them wish they could tear Nangong Chen to pieces. "I will kill you, you little beast. How dare you be so cruel as to destroy my descendants of the giant lineage?" After being sad for a while, Wan Ping's eyes were blinded by hatred, his veins bulged, and his face turned red. He couldn't bear to see that the enemy who killed his son was still so high and mighty, sitting on the throne and looking down at him. He kicked his legs back, holding a huge axe like an angry blood bowl, raised the axe, and chopped towards Nangong Chen on the throne. "Don't want." Seeing this, the giant next to him shouted and tried to pull the other person back. Since ancient times, the first place on the 10 realms list has been announced as the first in the immortal treasures. What that adult meant was that if that boy was hurt, wouldn't it be disrespectful to that adult? Such an incident had happened before. Someone wanted to take action against the number 1 on the myriad worlds list, but that person and his entire force were uprooted by that adult with a wave of his hand and completely disappeared from the world. If that human was really injured by Wan Ping at this moment, then their entire clan would be finished. Several strong men reacted on the spot and wanted to intercept Wan Ping, but it was too late. Wan Ping had already rushed to the sky and was only a few steps away from reaching the boy. This sudden scene left many people unable to react, especially Li Qixin and others. Their faces suddenly turned pale and bloodless. Who could have thought that the strong man from the wild realm would suddenly attack, while the star envoy was still leisurely on the ring, without even the slightest intention of attacking? Seeing this, they became even more anxious and called out to the star messenger. "Star envoy, why don't you take action? Brother Nangong is about to die." Li Qixin shouted. Not only were they in such a panic, but the cultivators from the 3 continents of Tianyuan realm also had pale faces and looked at this scene at a loss. They didn't want to witness with their own eyes the rising genius die at the hands of the people from the wild realm. "Little bastard, you have to pay for my son's life. I won't lose anything by exchanging my life for a genius ranked number 1 on the myriad worlds rankings." Ha ha ha. Seeing that the axe was about to fall, Wan Ping saw that he was still calm and didn't even have the slightest thought of running away. So he just laughed out loud, his eyes still bloodshot. It was as if he had already seen the other person's flesh and blood torn into pieces and his life force destroyed. Noisy. And at this moment, a cold voice suddenly sounded. The next moment, dragon energy roared out from the sky and transformed into brilliant sword lights. Suddenly, the sword rain in the sky was as bright as stars. At this moment, the endless rain of swords burst towards Wan Ping. "You're just a little god king kid playing tricks on me. I'm going to chop you down with my axe." After Wan Ping felt Nangong Chen's breath, he sneered and didn't even think of dodging. He still raised the giant axe and chopped down. Swish! The sound of tearing swords piercing through flesh and blood was heard one after another. The moment the sword rain fell, it pierced Wan Ping's body. There was not even a piece of intact flesh and blood on his body. It was all blurred. Even a giant axe was torn to pieces and in tatters. Boom! With a loud bang, Wan Ping's body fell to the ground. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them and was shocked. The God King killed a quasi-saint with one move. They must have seen it, right? After Wan Ping died, the 9 realms fell into complete silence, and all living beings widened their eyes in amazement, as if they had witnessed a miracle. The giants who rushed into the void, after seeing that the quasi-saints were killed in one move, their legs went weak, and they turned around and fled in a hurry. At this moment, the strong ones among the gods, the Lane Arhut of the Buddha realm, and the Emperor of the Sea realm all fell into silence. Even the hatred in their eyes became much clearer after this move. No wonder the other party was able to kill so many geniuses in the immortal treasure, and no wonder the monsters under their command were no match for the other party. A monster with the combat power of a quasi-saint is enough to sweep across the entire immortal treasure house. If anyone else wants to avenge their own Tianyuan, I, Nangong Chen, am here today to take care of them all. Nangong Chen said in a cold voice, his double pupils looking around disdainfully, taking in the entire world. When the words fell, everyone's pupils shrank. No one had expected that the human boy would be so arrogant. Just when they thought that the powerful tribes, such as the gods and the Buddhas, would teach each other a lesson, reality slapped them in the face. Not to mention a lesson, there wasn't even a sound. Wherever the other person's eyes went, all living beings trembled, and no one dared to look up and meet his gaze. Chapter 329. No one dares to speak, shocking the 10 regions. On the battlefield of heaven and earth, everyone was already stunned on the spot, their lips slightly open, their eyes full of shock. No one thought that things would develop to this point. First, the god of killing directly admitted that he had killed so many geniuses from the 9 realms. And then, in full view of everyone, he used thundering means to kill on the spot a quasi-saint who wanted to come up and seek revenge. He even threatened to take all the revenge today. This domineering attitude clearly tells everyone, so what if I killed him? I am here today. Who can kill me? For a moment, Fozi, Xianhong, and others all looked aggrieved. They had never expected that even with the support of their own strong men, they would still be unable to do anything to the other party. They felt powerless, shook their heads, and looked at their own strong men with disappointment. It's bad enough that they are suppressed by a genius of their time and can't even raise their heads. But how come even you don't dare to fart in front of him? Hu Yao looked at the figure in snow clothes, and her narrow almond eyes couldn't help but shine with brilliance. The boy's domineering attitude had already been deeply engraved in her heart. The geniuses of the demon clan behind him had already spoken out of turn and felt a little relieved in their hearts. Fortunately, their princess had the foresight to not make enemies with the other side, otherwise the forces behind them might not be able to protect him. The other party was really too arrogant. I thought he was only like this in front of them, the geniuses, but I didn't expect that he was still so domineering even in front of so many powerful people in the 9 realms. At this time, the remaining geniuses present all had bitter tastes on their lips. With such a monster among the human race, there is no need to worry about not being able to rise in the future and crush the remaining 9 domains. On the other side in Xintian territory, Li Qixin and his men had already recovered from their shock. Looking at the figure in snow-clothed clothes and the shocked look on the faces of the 9 territories, they felt an indescribable horror in their hearts. Who could have imagined that one day, such a genius would appear in their human race, sitting high on the throne with the power of one person and suppressing the 9 realms? No one dares to be his enemy. No one dares to speak out. Suli stood in front of everyone, with a cold temperament. Her face under the 3,000 silver threads was extremely beautiful, and no one could ignore her. Just standing there, countless eyes in the 9 realms were looking at her. And even this cold fairy who doesn't care about the world, at this moment, in her pair of ice-blue pupils, there's only the domineering figure of the young man. Nothing else. Good kill. Lu Dezhu clenched his fists and said excitedly. Although Wang Tong, Chao Li and Xiong on the side did not say anything, the blazing admiration on their faces was enough to explain everything. Shi Ming and Chu Yan were also staring blankly at the figure on the throne, their eyes filled with complicated thoughts. Jiang Yingyue, who was not far away, was watching this scene with great interest, and no one knew what she was thinking. In the Xintian realm, Nangong Chen's domineering attitude directly ignited the cultivators of the entire 3 states, like a heat wave sweeping across the 3 states, completely boiling them. They didn't expect that under the pressure of the 9 realms, the person with double pupils could still remain calm and respond directly and domineeringly. Even Wan Ping, who wanted to attack and kill, was killed on the spot by the other party with thundering means, shocking the entire 9 realms. This makes them feel happy and comfortable when watching it. This is the person with double pupils that we are familiar with. He is so domineering. It is truly a blessing for our human race that such a genius was born in our Xintian territory. A person like this is destined to surpass the 9 heavens in the future. At this moment, some powerful people in the void side, The young man was so dazzling that even the Xintian realm could not cover his brilliance. In a land of the three states, the name of people with double pupils swept through the streets and alleys like a tsunami. There is no one in the world who does not know him, and no one does not admire him. The degree of admiration those young geniuses have for those with double pupils is no more than seeing a god. Among the crowd in Chu City, the Qing family siblings were also looking at the figure with admiration on their faces. Seeing this, Qiyun couldn't help but blush and feel extremely happy. He knew that Nangong Chen's move just now was to vent his anger. The prince might be catching up with me soon. Qiyun muttered to himself, smiled, and then dived into the sea of clouds. In Zuaitian Pavilion, Zhuing also took a deep breath, and her snow-white chest rose and fell slightly. She was somewhat surprised by the young man's domineering behavior. In response to this, her beautiful eyes couldn't help but show a lot of appreciation, which was an emotion she had never experienced before. Chun Song on the side also smiled and sighed. With a person with double pupils here, there is no need to worry about the prosperity of Xintian realm. No, it should be said that there is no need to worry about the prosperity of formations. On the other side, in the Tianyuan divine dynasty, as expected of my son, his demeanor is almost on par with mine when I was young. Nangong Chen said with a smile on his face. After these words were spoken, some ministers and generals in the audience twitched their lips. They were all confidants transferred from Tianyuan mansion. So how could they not know what the mansion master looked like when he was young? But even so, they exposed each other. The crown prince's bravery is at its peak, and it is a great blessing for the divine dynasty. Someone sighed and said that it was a heartfelt agreement. The sight of the god king beheading a quasi-saint was still too shocking for them. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would probably have found it hard to believe. With such a genius, there is no need to worry about the future. At this moment, Su Ming seemed to have thought of something. His eyes gleamed, and he suggested, "Your Majesty, why don't you send a painter to come and copy the crown prince's current appearance, and make a statue for the people of the divine dynasty to worship?" As soon as these words were spoken, everyone applauded. "Great, Prime Minister Su. This is a great suggestion. If the prince's heroic figure were carved into a statue and placed in various places in the divine dynasty, it would surely protect the region and suppress evil spirits. From now on, who in the world will not know the majesty of our divine dynasty's crown prince?" After hearing this, Nangong Chen was also in high spirits and nodded slightly, showing that he was very satisfied with this proposal. "That's right. Then let's ask the artist to come over and copy it." Soon, an old man arrived with a look of trepidation and fear. He was the famous painter of today, Xiet Danqing. After thanking Nangong Chen, Xiet Danqing took out the materials, sat cross-legged on the ground, and began to copy the snow-clad figure in the sky. He was extremely alert and didn't dare to be distracted at all. Even sweat appeared on his forehead. This was definitely the biggest and most dangerous job he had ever taken on in his life. If I can't draw well, I'm afraid my entire family will be in danger. After seeing that Xiet Danqing had already started painting, everyone present immediately turned their attention back to the sky. Chapter 330. Fen Dao's Conspiracy, a Slap in the Face. On the other side, at the back mountain of the Chu family, there was an area overgrown with weeds. Under the dark night light, a figure slowly walked out from the shadows, and the sparse and scattered leaves stretched its back very long. Chu Ruchuan glanced at the figure sitting high on the throne and felt more and more creepy, even though the other party had never looked at this place from beginning to end. But it was as if everything he did was being monitored by the other party at all times. Thinking of this, she secretly swallowed her saliva, suppressed the panic in her heart, and suddenly spoke in a deep voice, not knowing who she was talking to. "The ancestral land is ahead. It's time to fulfill the conditions you promised me." As soon as he finished speaking, a figure wearing a big sun flame robe appeared. He looked at him with calm eyes and threw a storage ring to Chu Ruchuan. At the same time, the corners of the old face slowly lifted, looking a little strange under the chaotic light. Not bad. Chu Ruchuan couldn't see the appearance of the person in front of him, nor did he know his identity, but he knew that the other party was a wealthy man, whether it was the lavishness of his previous spending or the clothes he was wearing. What puzzled her was that she felt she had seen the robe somewhere before, but the other person's face was one she had never seen before. Chu Ruchuan didn't think much about it. She just wanted to complete the transaction with the other party. After counting the storage rings, she suppressed the surprise in her heart, nodded slightly, and returned to her usual indifference. "Yes, you have some conscience. The ancestral land has been strictly guarded recently, and it is difficult for outsiders to enter. If I were not in a high position and had 1 or 2 quotas, I am afraid it would be difficult for others to set foot in. 1 immortal crystal in exchange for a day's opportunity to observe the ancestral land. I will come here to pick you up at noon tomorrow." After he finished speaking, without waiting for the other party to respond, Chu Ruchuan turned around and left the place with an arrogant attitude. Fun Dao quietly watched the other person's departing back, stretched out his hand, and made a gesture, sending a dark flame into the other person's body, with a cruel sneer on the corner of his mouth. If he wasn't afraid of being exposed, he really wanted to kill the other party right now. She really thought she was being taken advantage of. He wanted to see if the other person's stomach could satisfy her greed. Taking advantage of the hidden light, Fun Dao raised his calm eyelids and slowly turned his gaze towards the snow-clad figure in the sky, muttering, "You little bastard, I'll let you be arrogant for a while. You won't have a chance tomorrow." As he spoke, the murderous intent that burst out was like a tide, causing the surrounding beasts to retreat. At the same time, under the night sky of Chu City, countless bats flew by, as if an invisible net was slowly spreading out, ready to devour everything. After a brief silence in the Nine Realms, soon, a powerful figure from the God Clan spoke with a cold gaze. "Human boy, you killed my people and are still so arrogant. Do you really think I wouldn't dare to attack you?" The speaker was an elderly man from the God Clan. He was dressed in a light gray robe, his eyes were indifferent, divine light circulated around him, and his aura was extremely powerful. He was obviously a saint. There were several servants following him. Seeing him coming out, the gods around him made way for him. "Come." Nangong Chen smiled, turned slightly sideways, and beckoned to him without a trace of fear on his face. He still has a few magical herbs, and if the other party wants to take action, he doesn't mind killing the saint today. Seeing this, the old man from the God Clan became furious and slammed the ground with his wooden staff, forming a terrifying air wave that swept across the area. How could he dare to take action since that person was here? He just couldn't stand the boy being too arrogant and wanted to suppress his arrogance. He didn't expect that the boy would not bite at all. Seeing that even the great elder was powerless to deal with him, the people of the God Clan felt somewhat powerless. They secretly clenched their fists and stared at Nangong Chen intently. The son of God died at the hands of the other side. Who among their younger generation can be born to fight against the other side? On the other side, the Sea Emperor of the Sea Area and the Lane Arhut of the Buddha realm were both silent and watching this scene silently. Seeing this, Nangong Chen was a little disappointed. He didn't expect that this tribe of gods was as cowardly as a turtle. How tolerant. I'll let you be arrogant for a while. Once you enter the upper realm, there will naturally be someone who can deal with you. The great elder of the God Clan snorted coldly, his words filled with absolute confidence. Then, beside him, a girl with runes all over her face echoed with hatred in her eyes. "You despicable mortal. Do you know who you killed? The Son of God has long been chosen by the gods of the upper realm. If you kill him, you are doomed to die. You will implicate your clansmen and your friends. Once he finds out, they will all be punished, and no one will be spared." But before she could finish her words, the girl seemed to be blown away by a force of gravity and vomited blood. Where did this ugly freak come from? Nangong Chen indifferently withdrew his hand. He felt disgusted to slap such a person. Do you really think that if a powerful being from the upper realm shows up, you'll be scared? You've provoked so many people, and in a few months, a venerable being from the upper realm will come and kill you. But would he be afraid? At worst, if he couldn't win, he could just let the ghost-faced woman protect him. At least they were related by blood, and judging by the other party's attitude last time, she would definitely not sit idly by. As for why he was so sure that the ghost-faced woman was so powerful, it was because he had seen a peerless master like Chu Wanli practicing, and the aura they emitted was very similar. Moreover, he could feel that within the sky, there was a gaze that was always watching him, never leaving. Seeing his granddaughter being beaten, the great elder of the God Clan could no longer sit still. His face flushed red as he pointed at Nangong Chen and cursed. "You are shameless. How vicious are these human beings? They even don't spare their own children." The Rune Girl was also filled with horror. She had not expected that the gap between her and the other party was so huge. She was at the peak of the God King, but she couldn't even catch the other party's palm from a distance. Seeing Nangong Chen's hand raised again, the Rune Girl trembled, looked at him with resentment for the last time, and then hurriedly fled back to the depths of the burial sky realm. "Oh," Nangong Chen said disdainfully upon seeing this. At this moment, in the starry sky, there was a graceful figure shrouded in chaotic energy. It was the ghost-faced woman that Nangong Chen had been thinking about. She took in everything below, and her beautiful eyes, which were always calm, showed a hint of disdain as she murmured, "He's just a god. Do you think you're worthy enough to kill him? The most urgent thing is to make him stronger and then return to the main clan." Soon, as a breeze blew by, the woman's figure disappeared. Meanwhile, down below, the Star Envoy was leisurely treading in the void, gazing towards the 10 realms and saying, "Does anyone still have any objections to being number 1 on the Myriad Worlds ranking? If not, Then the heritage temple will be opened. After the words were spoken, someone was about to say something, but before he could say it, the star messenger spoke again. That's right. Since there is no difference between you and the number one on the myriad worlds ranking selected by this envoy, then let's start inheriting the holy temple. Seeing this, the person who wanted to speak just now also shut up silently. Forget it, it's pointless to ask. Chapter 3:31, Opening the Heritage Temple. The words fell. In the midst of the dazzling galaxy, a floating temple was slowly rising, blooming with divine mist, like a natural palace. Seeing this miraculous scene, the attention of the creatures in the 10 realms was instantly attracted to the temple. At the same time, they also have an increasing awe of the stars in their hearts. What kind of extraordinary power must one have to summon such a magnificent temple out of thin air? Am I seeing things right? There's a giant sword stuck in the center of that temple. At this moment, someone in the 9 realms saw the entire picture of the temple and murmured, his eyes filled with shock. Nangong Chen concentrated and looked, and saw that there was indeed a huge stone sword inserted in the center of the sacred building. And on the stone sword, from top to bottom, it is covered with star runes. There are 9 star symbols at the top, and only 1 star engraved at the bottom. Just as everyone was confused about the heritage temple, the star envoy slowly explained. In case you have forgotten, I will mention it again. The top 10 of this immortal treasure, after entering the heritage temple, will be able to communicate with the stars and attempt to obtain the inheritance. If the runes on the stone sword don't light up within the time it takes to burn, it means you have no chance of inheriting the temple's legacy. On the contrary, if you obtain the inheritance, you can light up the stone sword. Lighting up 1 star means you obtain a 1-star inheritance, and lighting up 9 stars means you obtain a 9-star inheritance. After he finished speaking, everyone's faces showed enlightenment. So this is the rule. After entering the temple, if you get the inheritance within 1 stick of incense, the stone sword will be lit. If you don't get it, there will be no movement. It's still easy to understand. But soon someone asked in doubt, "May I ask the star envoy, what kind of inheritance is the 1-star inheritance? And what kind of inheritance is the 9-star inheritance? Compared with the 2, which one is better?" As soon as these words were spoken, many people's eyes focused on the star envoy, and they were also puzzled. Upon hearing this, the star envoy looked towards the heritage temple and said in a leisurely tone, "Inheritances from 1 to 5 stars are the inheritance of true immortals. If you can obtain them, you will be able to become an immortal in the future without any accidents. Your aptitude will be among the top among the geniuses. Even if you have obtained a 1-star inheritance in the upper realm, you are considered a saint-like figure, extremely rare. It can be said that as long as you light the stone sword, your future is worry-free." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. They had never thought that as long as they inherited the legacy in this inheritance temple, their future achievements would at least be that of an immortal. Becoming an immortal is the highest ideal of every cultivator and the dream of everyone. If one becomes an immortal, even in the upper realm, he will be a top-level, powerful being beyond the scope of spiritual practice. The reason why the upper realm is called the upper realm rather than the fairy realm is that even the upper realm with its outstanding people and beautiful scenery is not beyond the scope of spiritual practice. It's like when you cultivate to the level of a saint and then go higher, except for getting some opportunities and luck, there's almost no other way for you to break through to above the level of a saint. Because you are completely ignorant of the realms above the saints. If you want to break through to the subsequent cultivation, you can only go to the upper realm to explore. The role of the upper realm is like the second half of spiritual practice, but it has not yet reached the level of becoming an immortal. Thinking of this, the geniuses on the battlefield of heaven and earth couldn't help but swallow their saliva secretly. If you can get the inheritance, even if it is only 1 star, everything will go smoothly in the future, even in the upper realm. Soon, some people became curious. If the inheritances from 1 to 5 stars were so powerful, what about the ones after that? Wouldn't they be even more powerful? May I ask, Star Envoy, what is the inheritance after the 5 stars? A living being said sincerely. Although they are destined to practice Taoism in this life, it cannot stop their desire to become immortals. Even if I don't have that opportunity, it would be worth the trip if I could see the world. The Star Envoy laughed when he heard this. These people had already started dreaming about the last 4 stars before they even saw the genius enter. I'm not trying to discourage you. If one of the top 10 people in this session can obtain a 1-star inheritance after entering the Heritage Temple, it would be a great opportunity, a rare occurrence. In previous immortal treasures, most of them were between 10 people, and no one received any inheritance at all. In the past thousands of years, only occasionally did we see someone barely get 1 star. Upon hearing this, everyone was shocked. They had not expected that the threshold to obtain the inheritance would be so high. Even the top 10 in the immortal treasures couldn't do it. They were the top 10 monsters in the 10 realms, yet only a few people could inherit them. If it were someone else, they wouldn't even be able to reach the threshold. No wonder the Star Envoy only mentioned the first 5 stars. He simply didn't believe that anyone in this generation could inherit the last 4 stars. Even though those geniuses who were in the top 10 of the battlefield of heaven and earth had long known the difficulty of the inheritance temple, they couldn't help but feel a little nervous after actually hearing about it. But since you want to know, I can't help but tell you. The Star Envoy shook his head, paused, and continued. The inheritance above 5 stars is the inheritance of the immortal king. If one can obtain one of them, he will be the most outstanding among the top monsters. Among them, the 9-star heritage is the highest heritage in this heritage temple. It is a peerless heritage. The number of people who have been able to obtain it can be counted on one hand since ancient times. After these words were spoken, everyone's minds went blank, and they were extremely shocked. Immortal king? What does that even mean? Just a little bit of news about the immortals was enough to make them unable to accept it, not to mention the immortal king mentioned by the Star Envoy. They simply couldn't imagine how powerful this supreme existence, which they had never seen before, was. Thank you, Star Envoy, for clearing up my confusion. On the Tianyuan domain side, someone bowed in gratitude. No problem. The Star Envoy waved his hand, showing some appreciation for these humans, but this was not any secret information. He was just going through a process. Now that you have finished listening, let's begin the inheritance. The top 10 immortal treasures will be entered in turn. Soon, the Star Envoy set his sights on the 10 geniuses on the battlefield of heaven and earth. Let's start with number 10, Chao Li from Tianyuan territory. Yes, Chao Li stood up, bowed, and strode towards the heritage temple. If you look closely, you will definitely notice that his legs are trembling a little. At this moment, seeing that the first person to come on stage was the human race from Tianyuan territory, the noise in the surrounding area slowly rose. However, most of those noisy voices were unpleasant and full of disdain. Look at this kid, he's only at the great power level, but he's already in the top 10 of the immortal treasure. He's not as good as me. Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it. Who told us that this time, a bad star appeared in the human race? He killed so many people, even a pig could make it into the top 10. Look at how weak he is. Ouch, he's still glaring at us. Ha ha ha, we must have been right. Come up and hit us if you have the guts. In my opinion, even if you enter the heritage temple, you won't be able to make any waves. Just wait and see. At this moment, over in the sea, several sea tribe geniuses looked at Chao Li mockingly, with great disdain. The leader among them was a more distinguished young man with an indifferent expression. His blue hair was very conspicuous, and when his eyes opened and closed, there was surging sea water. Although he did not join in the ridicule, he could tell from the crowd that it was the man who ordered it. If they can't afford to offend that evil star, can they afford to offend others? In their hearts, the human race is still a race that can be bullied by everyone. Chapter 332, I also give you a chance to reorganize your language. As soon as these words were spoken, they immediately aroused dissatisfaction among the people in Tianyuan territory, especially the Qilin sect. The old leader of Qilin sect was so angry that he wanted to slap those brats a few times, and his face turned red. But even so, the old sect leader did not say much before knowing the other party's identity, for fear of causing trouble to Tianyuan territory, so he could only stare at them with cold eyes. Soon, the Sea's prodigies discovered the old sect leader. One of them, a tall young man from the Sea clan, coldly scolded him. What are you looking at, old man? Do you know who this is? This is the 3rd prince of our Sea area, the 3rd prince of Haijun. Can you afford to offend him? As he spoke, the tall young man looked towards the blue-haired man with great respect. Seeing this, Haijun also glanced over here lightly with an extremely arrogant attitude. His father, the Sea King, was not far away, and he didn't believe that these humans would be so presumptuous. As soon as these words were spoken, the onlookers from the 9 realms booed. They had not expected that this person's identity was so precious. Seeing this, some of them shook their heads. The unknown genius from Tianyuan realm would probably have to swallow this anger in vain. After all, no one is as crazy as that evil star, and he doesn't even take the people of the God Clan seriously. In front of such a person, you have to bow your head. After knowing the other party's identity, Chao Li paused and clenched his hands. No one knew the expression behind his face. Soon, he turned around, revealing his dark face. He shook his head and smiled, giving the old master a reassuring look. Then, the young man continued to walk forward. His tall figure, clearly under the spotlight that attracted everyone's attention, seemed a little thin at this moment. Seeing this, Haijun sneered and shook his head with disdain. Seeing this, Li Qishan behind him clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, saying, "Damn it, this is really too much." Just as he was about to explode, Li Muxiu, who was standing beside him, held him down and said, "Even Chao Li can hold himself back. If you explode now, Won't you just bring trouble upon him? After saying that, he looked at the several geniuses who were high above in the sea. After hearing this, Li Qixin calmed down a lot, but he still looked at those people with cold eyes. Not far behind them, Lu Dezhu had been stopped by the crowd, his face flushed red. Damn it! Let me go, I'm going to kill that blue-haired guy. No, Lao Chao has always been very strong-tempered. If you go up to him, he will hate you. Shown to stop him firmly and advised him. Just confess, I'm going to beat him. Damn it. I've never seen Lao Chao so frustrated. Lu Dezhu wanted to break free from his restraints. But the key is that you can't beat them. They're already in the late God-King stage, and you're just a genius. You'll be beaten to death. Xiongda had no choice but to shake his head helplessly and said seriously. As soon as these words were spoken, Lu Dezhu seemed to have lost his energy and fell to the ground, somewhat powerless. Yes, I am just a talented person. What else can I do? At this moment, even Su Li and the other girls frowned and watched this scene with frosty eyes. Among the 10 domains, the old sect leader naturally understood the child's eyes and suppressed his anger until Chao Li's figure disappeared from his sight. Snort! He snorted coldly, then looked at the figure with a breath as deep as the abyss in the sea. His anger could no longer be stopped, bursting out like a volcano. He gritted his teeth and said, "Is this how you teach your juniors in your sea area?" As soon as these words fell, the entire 10 realms fell silent in an instant. All the creatures in the 9 realms looked at the old sect leader with surprise. They had never thought that someone from the human race would actually question the Sea Emperor. That's the Sea King, the strongest being in the domain, and his cultivation is at the terrifying peak of sainthood. Although domains cannot attack each other directly, it is not worth it to provoke the hatred of a powerful person. But no one can predict what will happen in the future. In the sea, that terrifying figure stood tall in the ocean. After hearing these words, he slowly turned around, revealing his cold and domineering face. That face looks like a middle-aged man, and no one knows how old he is. But everyone knows that he is the true ruler of the sea, the king of the sea. The Sea Emperor looked at the old sect master coldly, as if he were looking down at an insignificant ant. Without a trace of anger, he said calmly, "I'll give you one chance to reorganize your words. After you finish, you can cripple your limbs, and I'll spare your life." When Haijun saw this scene, he laughed out loud and was having a lot of fun. There really was a fool who ran to question his father. This was going to be fun. Thinking of this, he looked at the human race with more disdain, shook his head, and clicked his tongue a few times. The old sect leader was stunned on the spot. Stared at by those terrifying eyes, he felt as if his neck was strangled by an invisible giant hand. For a moment, he even had difficulty breathing. He had never encountered such a powerful enemy before, so powerful that it made people despair. At this moment, the dragon energy in the sky gathered in the sky and turned into a golden dragon claw, reaching downwards. Only a shrill scream was heard. Everyone was shocked and looked up at the dome. At some point, the young man in snow-white clothes on the throne, holding a blood-stained blue dragon in his hand, leaned over with a playful look on his face. "Sea King, I'll also give you a chance to reorganize your words." Under the monstrous dragon claws, the dragon's body was almost broken and bleeding profusely. Looking at Nangong Chen in front of it, its eyes were full of fear. "Father, please save me. It hurts. Help me. I'm dying." Under the constant pressure of the dragon claws, the dragon's body was covered in blood and flesh, and dragon blood kept spilling all over the sky. After hearing the shrill screams, everyone finally reacted. The person that the young man was holding in his hand was none other than the third prince of the sea, Haijun. Chapter 333. Xingqian strikes, Poseidon bows his head. At this moment, the whole audience was silent. All living beings stared at this scene in amazement, their eyes filled with horror. They never expected that Nangong Chen, who was sitting high on the throne, would suddenly take action and capture Haijun. What he didn't expect was that the young man would use this to threaten the Sea Emperor in public. You know, he is the lord of the domain. With such terrifying cultivation, isn't he afraid of the other party's wrath? As the young man's playful words fell, the Sea King was speechless. His cold eyes stared calmly at Nangong Chen, emitting an invisible pressure. That strange calm seemed like a sign of impending storm. Everyone knew that the Sea King was angry. When the creatures in the sea saw this scene, they couldn't help but tremble. They could feel that boundless anger was about to erupt. They looked at Nangong Chen and shook their heads slightly, as if they had seen the other party's miserable condition in the future. Who would have thought that when facing such a strong man, Nangong Chen's expression never changed from beginning to end. His double pupils shone with astonishing light, and he looked directly at him without a trace of retreat. He even continued to increase the strength in his hands, making Haijun's screams even more miserable. Such a confident and calm attitude made many people look surprised for a moment. Let go. The Sea King took a deep breath and spoke in a deep voice. His tone was cold and filled with boundless murderous intent. He couldn't imagine that this guy was so rampant that he kidnapped his people in front of him. What was even more unexpected was that the other party, a young boy, dared to threaten him with this. If the Star Envoy hadn't been here, I'm afraid the other party would have died countless times. After the words fell, Nangong Chen sneered, as if looking at a fool, with some pity in his eyes, and said lightly, "Don't you understand what people are saying?" In an instant, the golden dragon claws increased their strength, causing Hai Jun to spit out blood and foam, and his dragon eyes almost turned white. "Father, save me," Hai Jun said tremblingly. His face looked extremely weak, and even his speech was a little slurred. The vitality in the sky was constantly fading away. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that if the other party was not rescued, Hai Jun would probably die on the spot today. Seeing this, Poseidon clenched his fingers, took a deep breath, suppressed his anger, and even closed his eyes for a moment. "Tell me, what do you want to do? What are your conditions? I can satisfy you." He gritted his teeth, opened his eyes, and stared at the young man in snow-white clothes who was looking at the throne. Nangong Chen heard this, but shook his head and said with disappointment, "Is this the tone you use when begging someone? Alas, you are such a useless thing. Even your father doesn't want to save you. You don't even have the last bit of value. It seems that you can only wait for death." He looked at Hai Jun, who was dying under the dragon's claws, and his tone was inexplicably filled with pity. Hai Jun was originally gasping for breath, but after hearing the words, his pupils suddenly shrank, and he tumbled violently under the dragon's claws. "No, father, please save me. My brother is already dead. If I die, our family will be extinct." His voice was trembling, and he seemed to be going a little crazy due to the extreme tension. On the other side, after hearing these words, the Sea King punched the ground in anger, creating a big hole on the sea surface and causing a terrifying air wave. "Boy, do you really dare to do it?" The Sea King pointed at Nangong Chen angrily, his eyes full of coldness. His previous patience was completely exhausted, and he seemed ready to attack at any time. He didn't want to bow down to a human child who hadn't even grown all his hair in public, but he also didn't want to let his son die at the hands of the other party. Therefore, he planned to snatch Hai Jun away by force. He didn't believe that a god king could stop him. Just as he was about to take action, he felt a terrifying pressure falling on him. Just heard a plop. Without any warning, Poseidon suddenly fell to his knees. When he raised his head, tremblingly, he happened to meet the condescending gaze of the Star Envoy, which was extremely cold, as if it only took a thought to kill him on the spot. Suddenly, he understood everything and his mind went blank. At this moment, all the living beings present in the 10 domains were confused and stared at the scene in amazement. No, why did the Sea King suddenly kneel down while he was talking? Nangong Chen was also a little confused. Why did he suddenly kneel down after saying such harsh words? He was just about to take out the elixir and the human emperor's sword. Even Hai Jun was stunned, his face stiffened, and his pale eyes regained some clarity. Why did the emperor suddenly kowtow to that brat? He was just about ready for the emperor to rescue him. Soon, a teasing voice was heard. "TSK, TSK, TSK. I never thought you guys in the sea would be so polite. You're almost dead, yet you still kowtow to me. You're way too polite." Hearing this, the Sea King came back to his senses a little slowly. His back was already soaked with cold sweat. He looked up at the young man in the snow-covered clothes who had spoken. At this moment, his eyes were filled with fear and panic, and his body was trembling, as if he had just walked back from the gates of hell. After a long moment, he slowly spoke. "Alas, my attitude was not good before. This matter is indeed my son's fault. As his biological father, I deeply recognize my mistake. I apologize to you here. I will accept any compensation you want." As soon as these words were spoken, the whole area fell silent. All living creatures looked at the bowing figure and the sincere tone, and found it hard to imagine that those were the words spoken by the Sea King. Just now, the other party was so arrogant that he didn't bow his head even when his son was tortured to death. He was such a tough guy, but suddenly he said these words out of nowhere. In the Xintian territory, the cultivators were as if they had seen a ghost, especially those who had spoken for the old sect leader before. As for the old sect leader, he was already dumbfounded at this moment and could not believe that this was the overlord who had just stared at him. After hearing these words, the creatures in the sea changed their expressions drastically, as if the sky had fallen. They would rather believe that the Sea King knelt down just now because of his old rheumatoid arthritis, rather than believe that the Sea King would apologize so sincerely. Just a few breaths after he finished speaking, Nangong Chen looked at the scene in front of him, and the smile on his face disappeared. His brows furrowed slightly, and he felt something was deeply wrong. As to why the other party's attitude suddenly changed so much, he knew it must not be because of his previous threat, but because of someone else's actions. As for who it is, he turned his head and glanced around, and saw the high and mighty star messenger. His eyes were very indifferent, and when he looked at him, his gaze was even a little evasive. Seeing this, Nangong Chen also completely understood who had just made the move. I'm afraid that the only person here who has such means is the other person. As for why the other party took action, he also had some guesses. It was probably because he didn't want to see the number one on the myriad worlds list that he had chosen being bullied, which would not be good for his reputation. After figuring it out, Nangong Chen slowly turned his gaze to the Sea King. Beside him, Haijun had already stood there in a daze. For a moment, he even forgot to stop the blood plasma from flowing out. He looked at the familiar figure as if he was seeing him for the first time. Chapter 334. Cleaned up. Is everything acceptable? Nangong Chen muttered to himself, his eyes flickering as he looked at the Sea King in front of him, as if he was looking at something. When Poseidon was looked at with such eyes, he suddenly felt something was not right, as if he had let a thief into the house, and a chill ran down his back. Is there any magic medicine? Suddenly, Nangong Chen spoke. No, how could a small person like me possibly have such a precious thing? Poseidon shook his head subconsciously, with a bitter smile on his face. What about the holy medicine? Yes, there are a few. How many? 5 beads. Really? I hate it most when people lie to me. Nangong Chen was a little skeptical, then lowered his voice and continued threateningly. If you lie to me, you know the consequences. After saying that, he added a little more strength to his dragon claws, causing Haijun to howl loudly. Father, I'm dying. Give it to him now. If I lose my son, I'll lose everything. It's really just 5 beads. Upon seeing this, Poseidon spoke without blushing or beating his heart, his tone full of certainty. Take out the storage ring. Nangong Chen didn't waste any time talking to him. He looked at the emerald ring on his hand and said directly. Upon hearing this, the Sea King staggered a little and the corner of his mouth twitched. He had never expected that this boy would actually set his sights on his storage ring. What others don't know is that he has a habit of carrying the treasures he obtains with him when he goes out and never leaving them in his cave. Well, there are actually 10. At this time, Poseidon was silent for a while and then spoke. He wanted to dispel Nangong Chen's covetousness for his storage ring. 10 holy medicines were already a huge price to pay for him. After all, there were not so many natural treasures in the sea. Nangong Chen raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't expect that he had guessed it right. This old fox was really dishonest. Fortunately, he was on guard. He shook his head and said coldly, It's too late. I just gave you a chance. If you don't want your son to die and your high family to be extinct, then just give me the storage ring. After he finished speaking, he exerted more force with his dragon claws, making Haijun's screams even more shrill. Father, please give it to him. I'm really going to die. If the holy medicine is gone, I can still raise it again. But if my son dies, it's all over. Haijun was dying. The dragon blood in his body was almost gone, and he was covered with wounds. After hearing these 2 sentences, Poseidon's fist suddenly hardened. This unfilial son, does he know how important his storage ring is? Besides, if you lose it, I can still give birth to another one. To be honest, his own son might not be as important as his storage ring. Just as the Sea Emperor was hesitating, the Star Envoy's untimely cold snort sounded again. After hearing this, the Sea Emperor instantly wilted. He could only take off his storage ring and handed it to Nangong Chen with some trembling. He just hoped that the other party would be gentler, otherwise not a single one would be left. I will never take a single needle or thread from you. Nangong Chen took it, and seeing his expression, he instantly understood what he was thinking and gave him a reassuring look. Don't worry, there won't be any left for you. Upon hearing this, the Sea Emperor showed gratitude. This genius who was ranked first on the myriad worlds list was not as bad as some people said. He was a completely good person. It seems that my son is really wrong this time. Just as the Sea Emperor was lost in thought, Nangong Chen had already sent a divine thought in and took a quick look. After a moment, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. You won't know until you see it, and you'll be shocked when you see it. I didn't expect that old Deng was quite rich. He actually had 5 immortal medicines, 20 holy medicines, and nearly 10,000 immortal crystals. Even the remaining miscellaneous pieces are placed among the priceless magic weapons. You told me there are no magical medicines, but only 10 holy medicines? How dishonest. After Nangong Chen's spiritual consciousness entered, it was as if he was in an empty space, sweeping away everything in his path like whirlwind, his hands never stopping, just like a vacuum cleaner. Wherever it passed, no grass grew, not even a needle or thread was left behind, and it directly swept through the entire storage ring. It was not until a few breaths later that he showed satisfaction, and his consciousness slowly withdrew from the storage ring. Before leaving, he even left a needle and thread as a gift. If you say you won't take a single needle or thread, then you really didn't take any. I wonder what the other person's expression will be when he sees this. Seeing that Nangong Chen had finally finished picking out the items for his storage ring, Poseidon breathed a sigh of relief. The other party was so quick, so he must not have picked out a lot, probably just a few. Thinking of this, he took a deep breath and couldn't help but look at me with disdain. Little guy, I'm afraid you won't even know what a holy medicine is, or what an immortal medicine looks like when you get in there. And you still want my holy medicine. Just as he was about to check the storage ring, Nangong Chen suddenly stopped him and said, Sea King, you might as well go back and take another look. There's so many people here, and there's so many eyes. If you look now, you're bound to leak something. If you attract the attention of the God realm and the Buddha realm, it will be more trouble than it's worth. Besides, this time I left a small gift in the Sea King's storage ring. As soon as these words came out, the Sea King's eyes lit up. He didn't expect that this boy was so knowledgeable about the ways of the world, and even stuffed a gift into his storage ring. It seems that they didn't take much. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel in a good mood, and even the look in his eyes when he looked at Nangong Chen became much more pleasing to the eye. He is such a simple and good boy. I really misunderstood him before. He felt a little sad. Seeing the look on Poseidon's face, Nangong Chen knew that the other party must have misunderstood something, but he didn't say much. After all, if I let the other party see the storage ring now, what if he gets angry to death on the spot? I've already taken it. In that case, look. Soon, the Sea King turned his gaze to Haijun, and the meaning was very obvious. It's not over yet. This is just one of the conditions. Nangong Chen naturally understood what the other party meant, shook his head, and spoke. Upon hearing this, Poseidon was stunned and stood there in a daze. Are you kidding me? He was about to question the other party with a cold face, but when he thought of the pressure from Xingqian just now, he suppressed his anger. What other conditions do you have, my friend? He said with a smile on his face. Nangong Chen waved his hand, then pointed to the location where the old leader of Qilan sect was, and said lightly, No, do you see it? I see. The Sea King looked in the direction he pointed, his face dazed, but he still nodded with some doubt in his eyes. Go and apologize to him until he's satisfied. Oh, and if I see you resort to other methods, you'll have to wait and see what happens to your son's body. Nangong Chen continued, his tone calm. After hearing this, the Sea King took a deep breath, clenched his hands, and then turned and left, flying towards the old master. Seeing him leave, Nangong Chen also turned his attention to Haijun. And you, third prince, when my friend comes out of the Heritage Temple, if you want to survive, you know what to do, right? Haijun, who was almost unconscious and unable to speak in the dragon's claws, opened his eyes in a daze after Nangong Chen roughly gave him a breath of life and nodded like a chick pecking at rice. Chapter 335, It's All Because of That Man, 2 in 1 for 1,000 words. At this moment, everyone watched Poseidon leave Nangong Chen with a smile, and some of them were stunned. No, what the hell happened? Why did the originally furious Sea King become so gentle now? He was even servile and acted like a lackey during the conversation with the human boy just now. Although they didn't hear the conversation between the two people clearly, they knew that there must be explosive information. If not, how could the Sea King become such a different person? For a moment, all the living creatures were whispering to each other, and their eyes, as if they had seen a ghost, occasionally fell on Nangong Chen. Why did the Sea King suddenly give in? Could it be that the human kid has a powerful background? Could it be that that kid is the long-lost, illegitimate son of the Sea Emperor? That's not right. These two don't look alike. Could it be a genetic mutation? Come on. How could he be the illegitimate child of the Sea King? The Sea King just knelt down to him. Didn't you see that? Have you ever seen a biological father kneeling down to his own child? So, it's more likely that the kid has a terrifying background. How powerful must that background be to make a domain lord so fearful, even to the point of kneeling on the spot? You asked me, how would I know? And didn't you see it? Earlier, that brat said he killed most of the geniuses there, including some from the God Clan and the Buddha realm, but they didn't say a word. Oh, that makes sense. In that case, it's probably just as you said. Then you must never mess with that brat again. Soon, following everyone's speculation, all the living creatures quickly decided not to provoke each other in the future. When you see the other party, take a detour. In any case, you must not make enemies with the other party. Otherwise, ordinary people will die without knowing how they died. On the other side, the top powers in the Demon Realm, Buddha Realm, and Burial Sky Realm couldn't help but frown slightly after hearing these voices. They knew the Sea King's temperament best. He was so fierce and lawless that it was hard to imagine anyone being able to control him. Could it be that the boy's background was really as amazing as they said? At the same time, after some education, Haijun finally realized his mistake, turned into a human form, and was kneeling on the ground dying, his gorgeous clothes covered in blood. Beside him, Nangong Chen sat on the throne, his snow-white clothes spotless, playing with a few ink-black storage rings, his expression indifferent, like a banished immortal. That's right. Consider these things as your education fee. I hope you will mend your ways and remember this lesson. Nangong Chen flicked his fingers and shot out the rings that had already been empty. Seeing this, Haijun forced a smile that was uglier than crying, tremblingly put the rings in his pocket, and said, "Thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity to reform. From now on, I will definitely be a good person now, a good demon, and live up to your trust." Although these words sounded a bit false, one could also hear that the other person was so helpless that he wanted to cry, but had no tears left. Upon hearing this, Nangong Chen nodded slightly and looked into the distance. There is no need to kill such a person and dirty his hands. Of course, if the other party still refuses to repent, he does not suggest sending him to hell. Haijun's body was trembling, and there was no thought of revenge in his mind. His face was pale, as if the person in front of him was an evil ghost from the abyss. Seeing the other party look away, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. He did not rush to look at his storage ring, but was thinking about how to apologize most sincerely to save his life. "Royal brother, your death is truly worth it," Haijun murmured, his eyes filled with regret and fear. He had long since learned from the surviving Sierra prodigy that his brother had already been killed by the prodigy before him, and that his previous provocative behavior was also intended to provoke the other party. "I regret it now. I didn't expect that I would kick the iron plate directly." He remembered the other party's attack just now very clearly, and he couldn't use any means of resistance at all. In the blink of an eye, he was caught by the other party. You have to know that he is from the Jiao clan, and his cultivation is at the late stage of the Divine King. The other party is at the same level as him, or even weaker than him, and his physical body is so terrifying. It's no wonder that Hai Wuhan was defeated. This #1 genius on the Myriad Worlds ranking is truly worthy of his title. He spat out a mouthful of blood foam, with a bitter taste at the corner of his mouth. On the other side, under the gaze of everyone, the Sea King trembled and came to the place not far from the old leader of Qilan sect. There was a boundary wall between the two. Seeing the Sea Emperor coming, the faces of the people in Xiantian territory suddenly became alert. They took a step back, their eyes full of fear. The old sect leader had a bitter look on his face. He knew that the other party had come here specifically to seek revenge for what had just happened. But he doesn't regret it. Anyone who saw the child isolated and helpless would have been filled with rage. Not to mention, that was the child he raised since childhood. Everyone has their own responsibility. If you want to seek revenge, come to me. Don't hurt the child. The old sect leader took a deep breath, stood up, and spoke in a deep voice with a serious expression. Everyone's faces were gloomy. They didn't expect that the other party would be so bold as to come here to seek revenge. Although the boundary wall cannot be easily crossed by anyone, it is inevitable that some people have other means. Seeing everyone's eager eyes, Poseidon's eyelids twitched, and he quickly waved his hand and explained, "You misunderstood. I'm not here to seek revenge, nor am I here to harm you. I'm here to apologize to you." After these words were spoken, everyone looked confused. Apologize? What the hell is this? The old sect leader remained silent, his face solemn, as he carefully checked the other party's expression. What a joke! Would a dignified lord of a domain apologize to me for such a trivial matter? Moreover, before this, the other party spoke with contempt, which could not be disguised. Seeing that he still didn't believe it, the Sea King became anxious all of a sudden. He quickly bowed forward and said sincerely, "I really came to apologize to you. I know it was my fault just now. I shouldn't have treated you in that tone. I'm not a good father. I didn't teach my son properly and let him do whatever he wanted. It's all my fault." After saying that, the Sea King wanted to kneel down and kowtow, but was stopped by the old sect leader. "Stop." The old sect leader quickly said that he did not have that much face to withstand the worship of the lord of a region. At this moment, everyone from Xintian domain who was watching on the side was a little confused, not understanding what the Sea Emperor was up to. "If you want to use any tricks on me, then go ahead and do it. Don't use these fancy tricks." The old sect leader raised his eyebrows and said in a cold voice. He could see that, given the other party's personality, he must have bad intentions in doing these things suddenly. But who would have thought that after hearing this, the Sea King knelt down with a plop and said sincerely, "My dear fellow, I'm here to apologize to you. This is no joke. I know the trouble my worthless son has caused your disciples, and I shouldn't have been biased towards him. This is all my fault. When I return, I will punish you severely." When these words were spoken, even the old sect leader was a little stunned. It seemed that the other party really came to apologize. But how could he deserve the lord of a region to come and apologize in person? "Are you here because someone asked you to?" the old sect leader asked, still with some disbelief in his eyes. He had a shocking thought, but he never dared to think in that direction. After hearing this, Poseidon shook his head wildly like a rattle, but his eyes drifted towards the figure on the throne above the sky from time to time. Immediately, the old sect leader understood everything, sighed softly, and his eyes were full of horror. He had never imagined that the young man had such great power that he could make the lord of a region come and admit his mistakes to him. What he didn't expect was that when the young man tortured Hai Jun earlier, he seemed to be really venting his anger for Chao Li. He understood that, in the final analysis, all of this was due to the good karma Chao Li had created himself, which led him to meet this extremely terrifying nobleman. Thinking of this, his eyes flashed with relief. The child was finally recognized and had his own friends. "I'm not angry anymore, go back." After the old sect leader thought it through, he spoke. Really? How about you come out and slap me twice?" Upon hearing this, Poseidon's expression was filled with indescribable surprise, and his breathing became a little rapid. The old sect leader shook his head. Since the child came to give him face to do this, there was no need to go too far. Worrying about whether the other party was right or wrong was not something he could consider with his strength. "In that case, I'll take my leave now. If you have any problems in the future, you can come to me." Seeing this, Poseidon said nothing more and said goodbye sincerely. Soon, it turned into a stream of light and excitedly headed towards Nangong Chen to make the delivery. Seeing this scene, even if the people present were dull, they should have figured out who was behind all this. At this moment, the strong man in the void was silent. The power behind a person with double pupils is so great. Zhao Lei sighed. He had not expected that a conflict between domains would end in this way. He captured the third prince of the sea, made the Sea Emperor kneel, and even robbed the Sea Emperor. That person with double pupils must be considered the most domineering genius since ancient times. Wang Qi, the head of the Wang family, also echoed this, with cold sweat breaking out on his back. If he had known earlier that the other party was so fierce, he would have directly knelt down and begged for mercy in the Qing family compound that day. Why would there be so much trouble? Now it seems that the small request made by the other party is not excessive. At least it can save my life. At this moment, the cultivators from the 3 states were also extremely excited, and all their previous frustrations were swept away. They had noticed something was wrong a long time ago. From Nangong Chen suddenly attacking Hai Jun to the Sea King personally coming to apologize, everything seemed to have become clear. But they didn't dare to think that all of this seemed to be really done by that man. At this moment, the shouts of the man with double pupils were like a wave, sweeping across the 3 states, deafening and extremely exciting. That bastard third prince looked down on our Tianjiao, and now he's been beaten so badly that he can't even recognize his mother. Behave yourself, and he has to be a person with double pupils. This is definitely the most outrageous display we've ever made in front of the 9 territories in thousands of years. He dared to hit the son of a territory lord right in front of him, even forcing that territory lord to kneel and admit his fault on the spot. I finally understand why those bastards like to bully others. I finally experienced it today, and it was really satisfying. Today, the person with double pupils has spread the name of our Tianyuan realm. His name will surely be recorded in the annals of history, and his fame will last forever. The young geniuses in the 3 states also had fanatical expressions on their faces. They had been completely conquered by this domineering man. Only Nangong Chen can lead them out of the siege and regain face. In the palace of the Tianyuan divine dynasty, the emotions of all the civil and military officials were also surging. The emotions were the most intense and proud. "Prince, you are truly domineering. This time you have truly stood up for our Xiantian territory." They're just fighting for their own pride, but they don't even consider people from other domains as human beings. The only pity is that I don't know what method the prince used to make the Sea Emperor so scared. Everyone was talking about it. Nangong Chen on the stage, his face flushed and his spirits high, said, "You have guts worthy of being my son. Facing the 9 realms, you have to be so domineering." But after a while, he shook his head and thought to himself, this kid was so reckless. At that distance, just now, if the Sea King really wanted to do something bad to him, he would be finished. But fortunately, the Star Envoy was there. It is a good thing to have someone to protect you, but you can't push it too far. He thought to himself that as a top-tier expert, he could naturally see the details of how the Star Envoy had just frightened the Sea Emperor. Inside the Imperial Palace, Wang Yuxuan's beautiful eyes shone brightly as she stared at the scene in the sky, muttering to herself, "Master is so handsome," especially the sentence he said when he helped the old master out of trouble. "I will also give you a chance to reorganize your words." It's so handsome. She almost lost her temper. Seeing Wang Yuxuan's nympho look, Zhou Wanner shook her head in disdain. They had agreed to practice together, but before they had practiced for a while, she had already run out to peak. But even so, Zhou Wanner did not choose to blame the other party. It just so happened that if it weren't for the other party, she might not have seen such an amazing scene. Thinking of this, the corners of her mouth curled up, and she was also recalling that scene. Not long after, the two heard a voice of surprise beside their ears. It's done, Your Majesty. I've finally finished it. Xie Danqing, with a rosy face, stood up excitedly. His legs were a little weak from kneeling for a long time. He held the scroll in his hands and looked at Nangong Chen. This painting is definitely the most magical one he has ever painted in his life. He dared to say that once this painting came out, no one in the world could paint better than him. This was not to say that his skills were superb, but because he happened to borrow the light of the person in the painting. Oh, so quickly spread out the painting so we can admire it. Nangong Chen raised his eyebrows and spoke. Wang Yuxuan and Zhou Waner also cast curious glances, and even the little princess of the Su family, Su Li's sister Su Yao, came forward. P.S. There will be a big update this month. In order to reach 1 million words by the end of the month, you can look forward to it. Chapter 336 Chao Li comes out. Who is Jingjing? 2-in-1 for 1,000 words. The next moment, Xie Danqing, with trembling hands, slowly spread out the 8-foot scroll on the ground. After seeing clearly, everyone was speechless. In the painting, Nangong Chen was wearing a snow-white robe, with flying black hair, sitting upright on the throne. His facial features are lifelike, his eyebrows are sharp, his eyes are bright, and his pupils are doubled, looking down at all living beings like a young king. And around him, 2 imperial golden dragons bare their fangs and claws, their cold eyes following the young man's gaze, examining the entire world. This overwhelming sense of oppression, coupled with the youthful spirit. And below, all the creatures in the 10 realms looked extremely panicked and terrified, looking at the young man above the sky. They don't know how to describe this feeling. It was like a young monarch patrolling his territory. That pressure is chilling. After a few breaths, someone spoke slowly, his voice trembling with excitement. What a beautiful painting. A truly wonderful painting. They seem to have seen this painting. If it were passed down in the future, those descendants would see that there was such a prince in the Divine Dynasty who suppressed the 9 realms and made them unable to raise their heads. Who knows what kind of expression they would have? Even more, if this painting were only reproduced and a prince temple was built in each state capital and the painting was hung there, who knows how many villains would be suppressed? How many people with evil intentions would be suppressed? The value of this painting far exceeds the feeling that the army brings to foreign countries, and it is even more deterrent. They could even imagine that if there were anyone who was so foolish as to invade the Divine Dynasty in the future, they would probably kneel down on the ground in fear and trepidation after seeing this painting. Thinking of this, all the civil and military officials were extremely excited, their faces were very hot, and they looked at Xie Danqing. As expected of a famous painter in the Divine Dynasty, his painting skills are truly amazing. When the women who came over saw the painting, their pupils trembled slightly at first. Then they were amazed, and their beautiful eyes blossomed with a strange light. Brother-in-law is too handsome and domineering. Su Yao's face was as smooth as crystal, and her saliva was almost flowing from the corners of her mouth. To be honest, she was a little envious of her sister for eating so well. Wang Yuxuan was pretending to be calm, looking at the painting with her eyes flickering, and no one knew what she was thinking. Zhou Waner, beside her, also slowly regained her composure. Seeing her like this, she said coldly, "Don't even think about this painting. It will probably be placed in the national treasury for strict protection, or kept in the ancestral land." She naturally knew what the other person was thinking and exposed it without mercy. Who said I wanted it? I just wanted a little bit. Wang Yuxuan stretched out her hand, gestured in front of Zhou Waner, and said guiltily, "How come my thoughts are so easily seen through?" Nangong Chen was also looking at Xie Danqing, his eyes flashing, as if he was looking at a rare treasure. Since he can draw that boy so vividly, why not let him draw a picture for me someday? Oh my God, how handsome I must be as a father. At this moment, Xie Danqing took in the expressions of these important figures and finally breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, he didn't paint that well. He just emphasized the feelings that the picture brought to him with rich colors. But he didn't expect it to bring such a big response. It seems that the 9 clans have been saved. That's right. Painter, you have painted my son so well, you deserve a generous reward. Come, give him 1,000,000 spirit stones and 10,000 taels of gold, and promote him to be the royal painter in the future. Sitting on the dragon throne, Nangong Chen waved his hand and spoke in a very heroic manner. Xie Danqing's breathing quickened when he heard this, as if he had been hit by a surprise that fell from the sky. After being in a daze for a long time, he knelt on the ground and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." At this moment, on the battlefield of heaven and earth, as the farce was over, All living beings looked at the figure on the throne with a bit of awe in their eyes. Nangong Chen, who was sitting on the throne, was feeling rather bored. He yawned and looked at the Temple of Inheritance. It's been so long. Why haven't you come out yet? But soon, the door of the Inheritance Temple suddenly opened, and a slightly lonely figure walked out. Seeing this, everyone looked at the giant sword that had never been lit from beginning to end, and then they understood something. Obviously, Chao Li did not obtain any inheritance in the Inheritance Temple, and not even one star was lit. The Star Envoy seemed to have anticipated this scene, and his eyes were very calm. It seems that person was right. I'm just a lucky loser. Chao Li lowered his head, walked in a daze, and muttered to himself. He had already thought that the creatures of the 10 realms were now treating him as a joke, and even the old sect leader was looking at him with disappointment. Thinking of this, he felt a slight pain in his heart. It's not that he doesn't want to get the inheritance, but because it's too difficult. Even a true immortal doesn't look down on him. His qualifications are really too poor. But soon, Chao Li felt something was wrong. Since he came out, why was there no sound around him, as if there was no one there? He raised his head carefully, but saw the complex and fearful eyes of the creatures from the 9 realms, as if he was some kind of devil. Looking to the side, he saw the old sect leader with a pleased smile on his face. He nodded at him and seemed to be saying something. He was too far away and couldn't hear much of what was said. He only roughly heard this one sentence. Kid, you've done a great job. Thank you for your hard work over the past 2 months. Hearing this, the string in his heart that had been tense finally relaxed a little at this moment. But he was also a little confused as to why the other people from the 9 realms looked at him like that. Just when he was puzzled, a blue figure suddenly appeared in his sight and flew towards him. Is it him? Chao Li felt as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He saw clearly that this was an extremely powerful dragon. Its aura was somewhat similar to that of the 3rd prince of the sea who had mocked him before. Won't you let me go even if you come out? He thought helplessly, revealing a hint of bitterness and powerlessness. How should he fight a genius in the late God King stage? Not everyone is as evil as Brother Nangong. Just as he was about to make a move, no one expected that the blue dragon would transform into a human form and kneel down in front of him without any warning. Chao Li saw clearly the frail, blood-stained face. It was none other than the previously domineering 3rd prince. Who caused his injury? No, why'd he suddenly kneel down in front of me? Chao Li's thoughts suddenly became confused, as if the computer had crashed, and he looked at the person in front of him. I'm sorry, it's my fault. I shouldn't have looked down on you and mocked you before. It's all my fault. I'm a beast, and I shouldn't have ordered my men to mock you. I saw Haijun kowtow and slap himself violently. After a while, his face became red and swollen with blood streaks. After a while, several other sirens also fell from the sky with a bang. Similar to Haijun, these monsters were also covered in scars. Some even had their limbs broken, and their faces were extremely pale. After they saw the person in front of them clearly, they quickly transformed into human form, knelt on the ground, and kowtowed to the other party frantically. We were wrong. We shouldn't have mocked you. We're sorry. We're sorry. Please forgive us. Chao Li was stunned when he saw the people falling from the sky. In the sky, Nangong Chen patted his sleeves and slowly sat back on the throne. His hands seemed to be stained with blood, as if he had just finished something and muttered to himself. I almost forgot about you beasts. That's right, he just went to the sea area, pulled out a few sea area geniuses who had just mocked Chao Li, and taught them a lesson, but the process was a bit brutal. At this moment, Nangong Chen looked at Chao Li, who was looking confused below, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and said in a voice that only he could hear, Look, these are all the results of my education. Little brother, just learn from them. On the other side, in the void, Ji Feng, who was watching this scene, twitched his lips a little and said, What an educational achievement. Are all the people in your Tianyuan territory so cruel? Qi Yao, who was already grinning from ear to ear, put away her smile after hearing this and said with a guilty conscience, It's just him. We, the older generation, are much more civilized. That's right, we are civilized. As she spoke, even she herself could hardly hold herself back. After a long time, Chao Li Tsai slowly realized that these people had not recognized the wrong person and had come to apologize to him. He also recognized the young man with a pig-like face. He was one of the sea area geniuses who had mocked him before. However, what puzzled him was why the other party had to apologize to him. Wasn't he so arrogant and domineering before? What exactly happened while he was in there? But soon, Lu Dazui, who was watching from the side, also walked over leisurely and whispered a few words to him. Hearing this, Chao Li's pupils suddenly shrank, as if he had heard something unbelievable. Okay, I understand. After a while, Chao Li nodded expressionlessly, and no one knew what he was thinking. He looked at the people in front of him, and immediately his previous anger disappeared, and he said, Okay, you can go now. If you encounter a situation like this again in the future, I hope you won't look down on others. Not everyone is as indifferent as I am. After hearing these words, Jun and the others were a little shocked. They didn't expect that after being insulted by him before, the other party didn't even hit them or even curse at them. For a moment, Jun's expression was extremely complicated. It seemed that he had indeed done this. He took a deep breath, looked at Chao Li, and said seriously, "Thank you, fellow Taoist. This matter really made us lose our minds. I will definitely remember this teaching and will never make the same mistake again." The other several Sea Area geniuses also apologized sincerely one after another, bowed, and left with Jun. Chao Li looked at this scene calmly, shook his head in self-mockery, and then sat on the ground somewhat dejectedly, looked at the figure on the throne in the sky, and then slowly put his head into his arms. In a scene that no one else could see, the boy's eyes were already red and wet, and he was crying uncontrollably. Not far away, Wang Tung and his companions wanted to go forward to comfort them, but they were all stopped by Lu Dezhu. He shook his head and said, "He needs to be quiet." After hearing this, several people quieted down, took a deep breath, and looked at Chao Li's figure with complicated expressions. For a moment, the atmosphere among the crowd was a little depressing. No one expected that Chao Li couldn't even get a 1-star inheritance. You can imagine how high the qualifications required by the Inheritance Temple are. It is like their goal since they started practicing Taoism has always been to become immortals. But now this Inheritance Temple tells you mercilessly, sorry, you have no chance of becoming an immortal, and directly cuts off their path to immortality. When everyone was silent, Xiong suddenly scratched his head and said, "Jingjing? Who is Jingjing? I can't figure it out after trying for a long time." As soon as he finished speaking, countless strange looks were directed at him. Seeing this, Xiong also shook his body in fear and whispered, "If you don't want to tell me, then don't tell me. Why are you looking at me?" Next one, the 9th place winner of this immortal treasure, Chu Yin from Tianyuan realm. The star envoy announced calmly. As soon as those words were spoken, everyone's gaze immediately shifted to the figure of the woman in plain clothes and light skirt. Chu Yin had a beautiful appearance, but she was somewhat frail. Her face was haggard and pale from beginning to end, which made many creatures feel sympathy for her. Soon, the sound of murmurs of discussion began to be heard from the crowd. "Hiss, why does this female genius sent by the human race feel a little off? She's so pretty. No, she's so weak. Yes, he's indeed a little weak and looks very sick. Could it be that he has some unspeakable terminal illness? Alas, it seems that the human race has really declined. Even such a genius can ascend to heaven. I guess this woman is just like the last one, unable to even light up a single star." That's right. Since ancient times, those who have been able to light up the Heritage Temple have all become famous figures. This is indeed difficult. I doubt that today, not a single genius will be able to obtain the inheritance. How is that possible? Didn't you see that kid on the Myriad Worlds ranking? He has such a powerful background. Maybe he can even get a 1-star or higher inheritance. Oh, how is that possible? He's only 1-star at best. If he gets anything higher than that, I'll eat him up right there. If you want to get free food and drinks, just say it directly. Don't beat around the bush." Obviously, the creatures from the 9 realms present were extremely pessimistic about whether there would be any inheritance in the Heritage Temple today. Some people were even certain that no one from the human race would be able to obtain the inheritance and would be destined to return empty-handed, even though Nangong Chen's previous move was so powerful. It is said that most of these creatures are from small domains. The reason why they hate the human race so much is because Nangong Chen killed all their geniuses in Xianzong. If you don't look at him to be unhappy, then who else can you look at to be unhappy? As for the other creatures, they were the top 10 in this session of Immortal Collection, as well as the geniuses of their own from the Burial Heaven realm and the Buddha realm. They also have a proud look, thinking that their race is the most perfect race, deserves the favor of God, and has a very high probability of inheriting the inheritance. As for the human race, haha. Chapter 337. Extremely heavy. Not a single inheritance has been born. At this moment, these creatures from the 9 realms were feeling aggrieved. Under the nose of the young man in the sky, they dared not say a word against the human race. They could only communicate in secret in mosquito-like voices. In the sky, Nangong Chen sat on the throne with a calm expression. He was physically strong and could naturally hear the whispers of creatures from other domains, but he ignored them. Instead, he glanced at them with a playful look. After all, he liked the feeling that the other party couldn't stand him, but couldn't do anything about him. On the other side, Chu Yin took a deep breath, and then, with a serious look on her pretty face, she stepped into the Temple of Inheritance. Seeing that beautiful figure disappear, the people in Xiantian domain began to get a little restless. Saint Chu is very well known in the Xiantian territory and is also recognized as a genius by everyone. At least she can obtain an inheritance in this temple this time. Even if you get a 1-star inheritance, you can slap the faces of these creatures from the 9 realms. When Chu Shana saw this scene, his eyes flashed, and he was filled with anticipation. He believed that his daughter was no worse than others. She was just too immature, but her talent was still extremely prodigy, not inferior to those top students. Of course, those with double pupils are not among the top ranks. Because the man with double pupils at this moment has the means to kill a quasi-saint, he is no longer a genius, but a truly powerful person that people fear. Soon, an instant stick of time passed. Seeing that the giant sword on the Heritage Temple still hadn't emitted a single ray of light, everyone couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Even Saint Shu can't do it. Then, the graceful figure in the plain skirt walked out of the Heritage Temple with a gloomy look on her face. It was obvious that she was not satisfied with her performance. The Star Envoy announced calmly, "Next." As time went by, it wasn't long before all 5 of the immortals had been tested. The result was shocking. Not a single person even got the inheritance. What's more, these 5 people are all from Tianyuan domain. For a moment, this made the onlookers from the 9 realms look very strange, as if they were forcing themselves to hold back their laughter. Puff! A Protoss's pride couldn't help but burst into laughter. It's so funny. Not a single person received the inheritance. I think it's a complete waste of qualifications for this Tianyuan realm's genius to enter the Inheritance Temple. But he was soon stopped by Nangong Chen's cold eyes. But even so, it was difficult to suppress their emotions. Even if they didn't say anything, their eyes were full of gloating. They really liked to see the human race in Tianyuan territory suffer a defeat, which is more satisfying than seeing their enemies die. Hai Jun, on the other side, also watched the whole process. After seeing that no human being had obtained the inheritance, he just shook his head with a look of regret in his eyes and did not say anything. On the other hand, in Tianyuan territory, the cultivators from the 3 states were all silent at this moment, and the atmosphere was extremely depressing. Who could have imagined that when the man with double pupils and the goddess Su were not yet born, none of the top geniuses in the Tianyuan realm would be able to obtain the inheritance? If it wasn't that their human race was truly weak in talent, then it was that the requirements of this inheritance temple were ridiculously high. Alas, even Overlord and Moon Goddess failed to obtain the inheritance. Could it be that this inheritance temple is really playing tricks on us? In the void, a powerful human being sighed. That's fine. I just don't believe that with such high requirements, geniuses from other races can obtain the inheritance. Some people also said it with confidence. Immediately afterwards, more and more voices rang out in the Tianyuan realm. That's right. Besides, we still have the double pupil man and goddess Su. If we can't get them, then there's something fishy about this heritage temple. Yeah, we still have these 2 trump cards that haven't appeared yet. Why should we be so demoralized? You have to believe in the one with double pupils. He's number 1 on the myriad worlds ranking. At this moment, on the battlefield of heaven and earth, Li Qixin and the others were somewhat silent. They had originally thought that even if they couldn't obtain a 5-star inheritance, it would still be easy to obtain a 1-star inheritance. But who would have thought that when it was really my turn, I would realize how difficult it was. It was like climbing to the sky. After seeing this scene, even Chao Li and Chu Yan, who had just entered, felt less depressed. They thought they were the only ones who couldn't do it, but they didn't expect that everyone couldn't do it, so it was okay. Seeing this, Lu Dezhu comforted them. It's okay if you can't get this broken inheritance. After all, not all the inheritances left by immortals are here. It's just a small part. It doesn't mean that you will never become immortals in the future. In other words, it's just that your bodies didn't choose each other. If all the true immortal inheritances were here, there would definitely be one that suits you. As soon as these words were spoken, the listless people instantly came alive, and their eyes gradually brightened. Yes, they were not chosen. Is it possible that they're just not worthy of the inheritance of those immortals? It does not mean that they're destined not to become immortals in the second half of their lives. On the contrary, as long as you encounter a true immortal inheritance that suits you, you still have a chance to become an immortal. Thinking of this, Li Qixin and the others finally understood, nodded, and looked at Lu Dezhu with some gratitude. I can't believe you're such a talker. Were you a scammer before? Xiongda was also secretly amazed when he saw this scene and whispered beside him. Get lost. You have nothing nice to say. Lu Dezhu rolled his eyes and wanted to punch the other person, but when he thought about the other person's focus on physical training and was afraid of hurting himself, he gave up. Seeing the 2 of them being so lively, all the geniuses present smiled knowingly, as if they were back in the fairyland. Not far away, Jiang Che looked at Jiang Yingwei, whose face was calm and seemed to be hesitant to speak. Jiang Yingwei, with delicate features and flawless appearance, glanced at him and said coldly, "If you have to fart, do it now." Hearing this, Jiang Che felt that something was wrong with Jiang Yingwei. as if she had become a different person, but he couldn't put his finger on it. This also made him feel more and more unfamiliar with the woman in front of him. He no longer loved her as much as before, and now he could only admire her. Thinking of this, he said, "Why are you so calm even though you haven't received the inheritance? I wanted to comfort you out of our kinship." He raised the confusion in his mind. That's right, Jiang Yingyue, who was the last one to enter, also did not receive any inheritance in the Temple of Inheritance. However, Jiang Yingyue was still cold after coming out, which was completely different from the reactions of others. Hearing this, Jiang Yingyue was silent for a moment, then said coldly, "You're talking too much. Why can't she get the inheritance? Funny, she is one of the powerful ones who inherited the inheritance. Is she going to take her own inheritance?" Jiang Che was also at a loss whether to laugh or cry when he saw this. Chapter 338, The Hateful Faces of the Gods. Next one, Xian Xiangling from the Burial Heaven Realm. In the void, the star envoy spoke lightly. After she finished speaking, the naked girl, full of divinity, stood expressionlessly on the red carpet leading to the temple. Her face was also extremely beautiful. Her appearance caused a stir in the 9 realms. Obviously, Xian Xiangling's fame is even wider in the 9 realms. Finally, it's the turn of our god clan Xuannu. Our god clan is blessed with unique advantages and will definitely receive the inheritance. Yes, let's show those humans what a true genius is. Come on, Zunf, light up the 9-star inheritance. In that divine realm, countless young people were cheering for it. Similarly, in the Burial Heaven domain, Xian Xiangling is only younger than Xian Jie, but in terms of talent, Xian Xiangling is better. This is also the reason why Xian Xiangling, who is only 16 years old, was arranged to enter the immortal treasure. Hearing this, Xian Xiangling did not react much, but just walked into the inheritance temple silently. The cheers from these people were of no help to her at all, and even only helped her attract unnecessary hatred. She knows this better than anyone else. Humans are just humans, creatures full of emotions, but God is God because he has absolute rationality. After seeing Xian Xiangling enter the Temple of Inheritance, the creatures of the 9 realms also stared at the Temple of Inheritance with burning eyes. Not long after, a cry from someone unknown broke the tranquility of the stagnant water. It's on, it's on. I saw the magnificent giant sword that was inserted straight into the center of the temple. And, at this moment, a blazing light was blooming at the bottom. 1 star lighted up directly. Seeing this scene, the people of the God Clan immediately began to cheer and were extremely excited. Unexpectedly, the Burial Sky domain would be the first of the 10 domains to light up the giant sword, and it would also be the first genius to appear and receive the inheritance. This also means that in the future, a true immortal will appear in their clan of gods. Upon seeing this, the faces of the people in Xiantian domain became extremely stiff. They had just said that this time it was extremely difficult, and it was impossible for anyone from other domains to obtain the inheritance. Unexpectedly, this slapped me in the face. Could it be that the gods are truly favored by heaven and can obtain any opportunity? Someone was unwilling and said through gritted teeth, "Why can they obtain the inheritance so easily, while none of the top geniuses of their human race can get it? This world is so unfair." Soon, an incense stick of time passed, but there was no sign of Xian Xiangling. Some people speculated that she was still inheriting the legacy. Sure enough, after half an incense stick of time, the petite girl full of divinity gradually appeared before the world. Xian Xiangling at this moment was even more indifferent and godlike than before, with a faint invisible pressure. She glanced at the figure on the throne in the sky, and a hint of fighting spirit flashed in her beautiful eyes. If possible, she would like to fight with the other party in the future. On the throne, Nangong Chen also felt a strong desire to fight and frowned slightly. "Are you sick? You got inheritance, and you want to get beaten?" Although the other party did not attack the human race in Xinzong, if he were to fight, he would not show any mercy and would not let her off because she was a woman. As long as he was fighting with someone, he only had eyes for his opponent. He made no distinction between genders and would hit women just the same, especially in the face. Then, as if he had thought of something, he raised the corner of his mouth and spoke silently to the other party. 1,000 immortal crystals for each training session. On the other side, after Xian Xiangling understood the other party's lip movements, she instantly lost all desire to fight and just clenched her fists secretly. 1,000, why don't you go and rob it? She only has $1,000 on her body over the years. Is she going to give it all to the other party just for a sparring match? It seems that the other party is afraid of her 1-star inheritance and can only use such an exaggerated reason to reject her. It seems that this person is nothing special. Xian Xiangling shook her head. A hint of disappointment flashed across her eyes, and she left calmly. On the battlefield of heaven and earth, after seeing that Xiangling really obtained the one-star inheritance, Lu Dazhu forced a smile. Shit luck. When he talked about the latter part, he himself felt a little unsure. How come this woman is so lucky that she has to receive the inheritance at this time? It's okay, we still have Brother Nangong and Goddess Su. They will definitely be able to obtain the inheritance. After all, it's been certified by the Myriad World's ranking. Lu Dazhu then spoke to boost everyone's morale. Hearing this, Li Qixin and the others did not react much, but smiled in relief. They had long known that there was still a big gap between them and the top monsters in the region, but they did not expect it to be so clearly demonstrated today. Even Zuanf only has a one-star inheritance. I wonder what kind of inheritance the two of them will get. Thinking of this, Li Qixin glanced at Su Li, who was not far away, and Nangong Chen, who was far away in the sky. The inheritance of the temple continues. Not long after, it was the turn of the Buddhist disciples from the Buddhist realm to go to the inheritance temple. After the foreshadowing of Xiangling, many people believe that the fourth-ranked Buddhist disciple couldn't be lower than Xiangling. At least you can get a one-star inheritance. Even the Buddha himself thought so, and felt that he could finally show his prowess in front of the 10 realms of heaven. However, no one expected that after an incense stick of time, the Buddhist disciple had not even lit a single star and walked out of the inheritance temple covered in dust. This made everyone in the Buddha realm look stunned for a moment. What's going on? Is it really so difficult to obtain inheritance from this inheritance temple? Strong men in the Buddha realm murmured that they all knew how extraordinary the Buddha's talent was. Upon hearing this, the powerful God clan member sneered. It seems your Buddha clan has also fallen, reduced to sitting at the same table with the human clan. After he finished speaking, the Lane Arhut of the Buddha realm had an extremely ugly expression on his face. Everyone knew that the human race member had not yet passed down the inheritance. Wasn't the other party's words a humiliation to them? Yours isn't much better. It's just a one-star inheritance, Lane Arhut said with a cold face. After hearing this, the powerful god also laughed loudly. His face looked superior. 1 star? Ha ha ha, fellow Taoist, please stop joking. That's the threshold to becoming an immortal. 1 star can't possibly leave you far behind. Today, I'm afraid only the geniuses of our god clan can receive the inheritance in this inheritance temple. Upon hearing this, Lane Arhut was speechless for a moment. He hadn't expected that the faces of these gods would be so hateful. Oh, are you so sure? There are still 2 people from the human race who haven't entered the heritage temple. A strong man from the demon clan spoke. As soon as these words came out, the expression of the powerful god changed instantly, but he still remained stubborn. Strong strength doesn't mean strong talent. It only means that this boy is a little stronger at this starting stage. However, there are also differences in strength between races. I don't believe they can also obtain the inheritance. Upon hearing this, the powerful demon shook his head and remained silent. He looked towards the human race with his eyes flashing. I actually hope that the other party will have a genius who inherits the legacy and give him a slap in the face. Chapter 339. Dissatisfaction in all regions. Fox Yao Yao lights up a star. The inheritance continues. Hu Yao Yao looked at the magnificent ancient palace in front of her, her golden hair shining brightly under the starlight. Under the gaze of everyone, she walked in with light lotus steps. If she gets the inheritance, everyone will be happy. If she doesn't get it, she won't be discouraged. At worst, she won't become an immortal in the future. Her desire for spiritual practice was far less valued than that of the world. Soon, the golden figure disappeared from the sight of the world. The discussion among the people present gradually began to rise. You said that Fox Yao Yao from the demon realm is not like that Buddhist disciple, just now, unable to light up a star. I think it should be. After all, this thing doesn't depend on your strength. It seems to be related to bloodline. Otherwise, how could the girl from the god clan obtain the inheritance so easily? So that's how it is. Is it related to race? It seems like the human race is doomed. Isn't this good? That brat killed so many of our geniuses earlier, and he was still showing off. It makes me angry just watching him. Wouldn't it be fun to see him get humiliated? So, if the last 2 humans today can't get the inheritance, then doesn't that mean that none of the 7 humans who entered will get the inheritance? TSK, 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 what a shame and a waste of spots. If this gets out, I wonder how many creatures in these 10 regions will laugh at it. When the people in Xintian territory heard these whispers, they couldn't help but clench their hands and harden their fists. They looked a little aggrieved, but they couldn't refute anything. After all, this was the fact. If Goddess Su and the one with double pupils fail to obtain the inheritance in the end, it will be a great loss of face for their Xintian realm. On the other side, in the battlefield of heaven and earth, Li Qixin and others saw this scene, and their faces showed some guilt. There is nothing we can do. It is their fault that they are not up to the mark, and have brought shame to Xiantian domain. Whether or not he can regain his last bit of face depends on the man with double pupils and the goddess Su. An incense stick of time was about to pass, and just when everyone thought that the inheritance temple would not light up, even the Demon King, the leader of the demon realm, couldn't help but shake his head when he saw this scene. Still can't do it? But who would have thought that under the giant's sword, a ray of light slowly rose up and directly lit up a star on the giant's sword. One star inheritance, the appearance of a true immortal. Soon, the golden figure walked out of the inheritance temple. Her face was still charming and bright, but her every move carried a different kind of charm. Obviously, Hu Yaoyao has become even more powerful. Seeing this, the faces of the creatures from the 10 realms were filled with horror. They had never expected that at the last moment, Hu Yaoyao would be able to obtain the inheritance. For a moment, the arrogant faces of the gods suddenly froze. They had never expected that a monster with the appearance of a true immortal could appear in this demon realm. This instantly broke the situation of one superpower and many strong forces ruling their divine realm. It's okay. The demon race is also favored by heaven. Isn't it normal for a true immortal to appear? The powerful god pretended to be relieved and said, then changed the subject. As for the human race, among the 5 people who entered earlier, none of them obtained the inheritance. This is a shame shared by all 10 regions. If these places were distributed, perhaps all the races present today would have the opportunity to become true immortals. What a pity, what a pity! As soon as these words were spoken, the creatures in other domains seemed to have thought of something, and looked towards the Xiantian domain with cold eyes and unfriendly expressions. Yes, if those places were distributed, the geniuses in their clan might be able to get the inheritance. This domineering human race has an irreconcilable feud with them. Seeing that his words had taken effect, the powerful god clan member curled up the corners of his mouth, secretly laughed in his heart, and looked at the group of humans with a gloating look. Diverting the flames of war is the most common tactic used by the gods. I see that boy is so domineering. Let's wait until it's his turn and see if he can get the inheritance. At this moment, a living being looked at the snow-clad figure on the throne and whispered through gritted teeth. Exactly. Look at how arrogant he is. It will be hilarious if he doesn't get the inheritance later. There were also geniuses from other domains who spoke with some bitterness. Far away in the Xiantian realm, everyone's faces were gloomy. They also knew that the creatures from other realms looked at them with such unfriendly eyes because they were instigated by the powerful god clan. This person from the god clan is truly despicable. In the void, Zhao Lei said coldly, "Yeah, why should we give him the spot that was won by the master of double pupils alone? How dare they imagine that? They are really a bunch of brainless idiots." The old sect leader also shook his head and echoed. Seeing 2 powerful men speak out, the other cultivators were also furious. That's right, why should we give it to them? Those were all earned by the geniuses of our Xiantian territory through battle after battle. Even if we didn't receive the inheritance in the Heritage Temple, we won't allow them to slander us. Let them be envious. As long as there are people with double pupils, there will be no chance for these geniuses to rise to prominence. At this moment, after seeing Hu Yaoyao come out, someone seemed to have thought of something and spoke excitedly. Speaking of which, it's our goddess Su's turn next. With her around, she'll definitely get the inheritance. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone became excited instantly. Yes, after Hu Yaoyao, the big one is finally coming. Not long after, the star envoy announced calmly. Next one, Su Li from Xiantian territory. After these words were spoken, all the creatures from the 9 realms present stared at the white-haired girl standing quietly in the starry sky. They knew that the breathtakingly beautiful woman was the 2nd most talented person in the human race and ranked 2nd on the Myriad Worlds list. Ranked 2nd on the Myriad Worlds list, what does that mean? It means that the other party has the potential to become an immortal. After entering the Inheritance Temple, there's a high probability that he will obtain the inheritance. If the 2nd place on the Myriad Worlds ranking was in previous years, he would probably be the focus of the whole audience. But there was no way around it, as this time there was an extremely domineering 1st place on the Myriad Worlds ranking. Of course, even so, no one present looked down on him. They had already seen the methods used by the number 1 on the Myriad Worlds list, and how he had demonstrated the quasi-saint combat power with his God-King cultivation. What about the 2nd one? What kind of talent should he have? Or can he also unleash the combat power of a quasi-saint? When everyone felt Su Li's aura, they were a little surprised. He was just a powerful person. A powerful being, who is not even a God-King, can take 2nd place on the Myriad Worlds list. Is that a mistake? For a moment, the strong men from all races looked solemn, and began to carefully observe Su Li to see what extraordinary qualities he had. They would not doubt the vision of the Star Envoy. Chapter 340. Su Li enters the Heritage Temple and spreads love in front of the 10 realms. In the battlefield of heaven and earth, Li Qixin and others looked at Su Li with burning eyes, extremely excited. It is finally our Xintian territory's turn to be proud. That's right, they firmly believed that the other party would be able to obtain the inheritance, and that their star rating would definitely not be low. Just based on the qualifications their opponents showed in the second round, they could be extremely confident. If even such a genius cannot obtain the inheritance, then there is nothing to say. Goddess Su is at least much stronger than Hu Yao Yao and Xian Xiangling from the God Clan. But at the moment, Su Li's mind was not here. Her brows were slightly furrowed, as if she was thinking about something. She felt very strange. Why did Qi Yao still not wake up after coming out? She remembered that when she just entered the first round of trials, the other party was still coming. She didn't know whether she still needed to enter the Inheritance Temple to look for more inheritance, since she had already mastered the inheritance of Qi Yao. You should know that learning more is not as good as learning well. Only what suits you is the most important. Seeing this scene, the creatures of the 9 realms were a little confused. They didn't understand why the human woman looked hesitant. Could it be that entering the Temple of Inheritance was difficult for her? The Star Envoy was also looking at Su Li, but he didn't speak in a hurry. He understood that the girl in front of him was the one chosen by Empress Qi Yao. If she didn't want to do anything, he really couldn't force her. After all, Qi Yao didn't even dare to provoke her immediate superior. Forget it. Let's just ignore it and go in first. Seeing so many gazes on him, Su Li stopped thinking about it, shook his head, and walked towards the Inheritance Temple. That absolutely beautiful face, coupled with that cool temperament and 3,000 silver threads rippling in the starry sky, made her as beautiful as a fairy in the snow. Seeing this scene, many young creatures from other domains were stunned by its beauty for a moment, their hearts pounding, feeling as if they had met the white moonlight. Even some famous geniuses from other domains began to deliberately inquire about Su Li's information. However, they are not human, so how can they know any information about the other party? The only thing they know is that the other party is second on the Myriad Worlds list and is at the great power level. Meanwhile, over in Xintian territory, the name of Goddess Su was resounding like a tidal wave. The cultivators from the 3 states were extremely excited, shouting and cheering as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They knew that the Goddess Su would definitely give them a surprise and would give those people a slap in the face. Seeing this scene, the strong men from other domains also began to look uneasy, especially the gods. To have so many supporters in one domain, the human woman must be more than one might imagine. You know, even when the Xintian territory's genius entered before, the human race had never been so excited and enthusiastic. And just before Su Li went in, he paused and glanced at the figure in the sky, as if waiting for something. Nangong Chen raised his eyebrows slightly, gave him an encouraging look, and smiled. You are the destined heroine, and this kind of scene is just the perfect opportunity for you to shine. Why should you be anxious? Seeing this, Su Li showed a look of satisfaction, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and then he entered the Inheritance Temple. Seeing this sudden interaction, many young people from other domains were instantly devastated and looked stunned. They must have seen it right. Such a beautiful woman actually has such a good relationship with that arrogant boy. Not just ordinary good, to the extent of winking at each other. They really don't believe that these two people are not having an affair. Damn it, my goddess, the human boy, you and I have an irreconcilable feud. He's just a little more handsome than me, a little more talented than me, and apparently a little richer than me. Other than that, what other advantages does he have? Why is that? Along with the sounds of the geniuses from other domains breaking through their defenses, this also made many women from other domains feel a little disappointed. I never thought that such a domineering human genius would already have a Taoist partner. They remembered that Nangong Chen's domineering posture when he sat on the king had moved countless female creatures' faces, and they felt as if they had been hit by a critical blow. However, due to the other people around him, he did not show his obsession with it. Hearing these voices, the young cultivator from Xintian territory also suppressed his smile, and his eyes showed some sympathy, as if he saw himself in the same state in the past. You would never believe that the person you regard as your true love already has a partner. When the strong men from other domains saw this, they angrily scolded their descendants for not fighting for it. They thought that such dignified cultivators would be attracted by such a good-looking appearance. At this moment, in the battlefield of heaven and earth, Li Qixin and others also saw this scene, and they all sighed that the couple had a great relationship. Chu Yin and Xi Meng on the side pursed their lips, not knowing what they were thinking. As for Hu Yao Yao in the distance, her tone was somewhat sad as she murmured, "What the hell? They're showing off their affection even after entering the Heritage Temple. It's like they're not the only ones there. If you push me to the limit, I will steal your man and leave you with nowhere to cry. Then, she continued to look at Nangong Chen's figure in the sky with a dazed look in her eyes. So handsome. When will I meet a man like this? If the people in the demon realm knew that the princess was actually a little fox, I don't know what they would think. Deep in the starry sky, Ji Feng looked at Qi Yao, whose face looked strange, and felt puzzled. It was just a bit of dog food, so why did it irritate this old woman? Suddenly, Qi Yao seemed to have thought of something, and with a white fist, she smashed the newly arranged meteorite table into pieces. Then, he calmly mentioned Ji Feng, who was eating melons on the side, and said in a cold tone, "You just tease me in your heart, right?" Ji Feng shook his head quickly, like a rattle, and denied it. I didn't, I was just thinking about what to eat today. God knows what's wrong with this woman. She suddenly comes to attack herself. Really? Qi Yao narrowed her narrow and long phoenix eyes. She didn't know why, after seeing the boy being intimate with her in this life. She couldn't help but think of the time when she had sex with Su Li and was accidentally kissed by him, and she felt an inexplicable anger. Obviously, it was Su Li who was kissed, not him, but the feeling was still deeply engraved in his memory and could not be shaken off. Really, of course it's true. Ji Feng nodded frantically, but soon he remembered something and said hurriedly, "All right, that girl has your inheritance. If she enters the Heritage Temple, something bad will happen. Why don't you go find her?" After hearing this, Qi Yao was stunned for a moment, then calmed down instantly. The next moment, she turned into a red flame and disappeared in front of Ji Feng. After Ji Feng saw that she had finally left, he collapsed to the ground, a little out of breath. She's really sick. Whoever marries her in the future will be blessed. Chapter 341. Lone Star Dead Soul, Rare Human Race. At this moment, in the Temple of Inheritance, the hall was empty, with scattered stars in the sky. If you look closely, you will find that the stars are sometimes dim and sometimes bright as stars, just like lonely souls wandering in the sky. The quality of this generation of human geniuses is truly worrying. I'm afraid no one will carry the banner in the future. In the air, a figure in armor appeared above a streak of starlight, with deep eyes, and no one knew who he was talking to. After a while, a short old man appeared from the starlight beside him and glanced at the palace gate. That's right. I was originally quite happy to see 5 geniuses from our human race coming in, but it turns out that there's not a single one with the potential to become an immortal. No matter how much I want to pass on my legacy, I can't. Soon, a beast-like figure from the west spoke up and jokingly said, "Old you, why are you so anxious? Aren't there still 2 people who haven't entered? Maybe one of them will be the pride of your human race." After hearing this, the short figure rolled his eyes at the demonic figure and shook his head. "I do hope so, but the first and second places in the past were always taken by the demons and gods." As he spoke, his tone was somewhat lonely. Even the armored figure remained silent after hearing this. Seeing this, the demon shadow said no more, shook his head, and looked a little regretful. He also didn't know why the human race, which he thought was so powerful when he was alive, had fallen to this point. At that time, almost all of the top 10 immortal treasures were occupied by humans. If a different race popped up occasionally, that would be a rare occurrence. But now, all the races in the universe have begun to grow stronger, while the human race has gradually withered away. It's really sad. Soon, the hall returned to its usual dead silence, and the 3 figures retreated into the starlight. Not long after, a bright light shone in from the crack in the door. Suddenly, the starlight floating in the void became much brighter. These inheritances are all observing, wondering which tribe this genius is coming from. Is anyone there? As the clattering footsteps got closer, a clear and pleasant voice was heard. Hearing this, the figures under the starlight gradually saw who was coming. Human race? In an instant, the souls of the immortals from various realms who were secretly observing poured out from the stored starlight, and even the 3 people from before appeared. They looked at the white-haired girl in front of them curiously, as if she was looking at something. Although Su Li had a strong mentality and was not frightened by them, she still frowned. She seemed a little puzzled, wondering why these true immortals' inheritances still had such a bad taste, given their age. Obviously, the sudden appearance of these figures was regarded by Su Li as intentional. Seeing this, the corners of the mouths of the true immortal souls present twitched. Not all the people who came in before would come out to see. It was only in these thousands of years that the human race finally entered the second place of the immortal treasure. So they became curious. Generally, it is the genius of a certain tribe or the inheritance of that tribe that takes it away. "See, you've scared my human race's genius. Why don't you just retreat?" The short old man from before yelled at the other true immortal souls with a look of dissatisfaction on his face. Hearing this, the immortal souls of other races also laughed. Old you, why are you so stingy? We're usually suffocating in there, and we finally see a human girl who is second only to the immortal treasure. Naturally, we're a little curious, so we came out to get some fresh air. Yeah, old you, we're just taking a look. We won't steal your genius. Even if we wanted to, we'd be powerless. Maybe we can even give you human geniuses some pointers, don't you think? The old man they called Lao Yu snorted coldly after hearing this, and then reluctantly agreed. Suli listened quietly and looked around curiously. Everything in front of her was extremely new to her. She couldn't understand why so many people came out of those star-like stars. Could it be that all the inheritances of the true immortals were hiding in them? And further away, there's a group of dead stars, extremely dim, completely different from this side. However, compared with the inheritance here, the one over there seems to be much greater. Is it also a legacy? Suli thought thoughtfully, but soon became a little confused. So she didn't know how to obtain the inheritance here or what the rules were. Suli had a cold personality to begin with, and certainly wouldn't ask questions proactively. He shifted his gaze to the old man who had just been called Lao Yu and remained silent. When old Yu saw Su Li's expression, he smiled kindly and then slowly explained. I am one of the descendants of the human race here. In my lifetime, I was the ancestor of the human immortal sect. My Taoist name is Yu Haijinxian. You can just call me Senior Yu. If you have any questions, you can ask me. He could see that although the human race was not good in this session of Immortal Treasure, the first 5 geniuses who had just entered were all very powerful and could have won first place even in previous sessions. It is conceivable that the competition for the top 5 is fierce. The younger generation in front of them was able to break through the siege and take second place. He must have something extraordinary. Besides, if he was not mistaken, the other party was only at the great power level. At this moment, the tall figure in armor also came closer to look, his eyes a little burning. He also understood those principles. Greetings, Senior Yu. How do I obtain the inheritance? Seeing that the old man had no ill intentions, Suli asked softly, but her tone was still a little cold. As soon as he finished speaking, a hoarse voice was heard. It was not the one Lao Yu said, but a true immortal from another realm, an old fox demon, who was also the demon shadow from before. Simple. Junior, you just need to show your natural physique. After hearing this, Lao Yu also glared at him. What did you mean? Answering right under his nose? When the old fox demon saw this, he also smiled but said nothing. That's right. It's exactly what the old demon said. You just need to show your physique, and a suitable inheritance will come to you. Of course, if after an incense stick of time, there is still no inheritance, it means failure. Lao Yu then added, I see. Thank you, Senior Old Demon and Senior Yu. Suli nodded slightly, bowed to the two of them, and spoke softly. As soon as these words were spoken, the old fox demon's face froze for a moment, and then the corners of his mouth twitched. He glanced at Lao Yu, and his eyes seemed to be saying, look at what you have done. Old Yu almost laughed out loud, but he suppressed his laughter and explained to Su Li, it was just a joke. That Old Demon Senior shouldn't be called Old Demon Senior. You can call him Fox Fairy Senior. He is a true fairy of the Fox clan. And me, girl, you can call me the immortal general from above. The tall, armored figure smiled. Upon hearing this, Su Li was a little confused as to why they had to explain, but she still nodded obediently. Chapter 342, I'll help you today. May I ask the 3 seniors why there's no human figure in the distant starlight? Su Li seemed to have thought of something, looked towards the loneliness in the distance, and spoke. Upon hearing this, Lao Yu slowly said, what you see now are all true immortals. As for those beings more powerful than us, the immortal kings, they are in the deeper areas, which is the place you mentioned. They usually don't awaken. If you can awaken one of them, you will have no worries in the future. As they spoke, all the true immortals present were somewhat afraid of that area. True immortals and immortal kings were 2 completely different concepts. Specifically, those are the existences that these old antiques have to call seniors. Lao Yu ignored it and continued. According to your outside world, our inheritances are all below 5 stars, while those in the distant world are all above 5 stars. As for how we true immortals are divided into several stars, it is of course based on strength. The powerful are 5 stars, and the weak are 1 star. Just like this old fox demon, he's a 1 star. You just heard that a 1-star inheritance girl went out, and this immortal General Shangfeng was very powerful among the true immortals during his lifetime, so he's a 4-star. As for me, I'm only 1 step away from becoming an immortal king, so I'm a 5-star. After he finished speaking, Lao Yu's face seemed a little proud. The human race has at least 3-star heritage, while the other races have only 1-star heritage, which is enough to show the difference in foundation. However, nowadays this powerful foundation seems to have blocked the genius of this era. Lao Yu smiled bitterly, feeling helpless. Just like the 2 human geniuses just now, namely Qixin and Chu Yin, who clearly had the status of 2 stars, but did not have the corresponding inheritance, so they could only return empty-handed. On the contrary, the geniuses of other races always return with a full load every time. The reason is simply that they have more 1-star talents. After hearing his words, the fox fairy beside him frowned and shook his head, seeming speechless. Whenever the other party starts to introduce themselves, he is always cited as an example. Although there is nothing wrong with it, it just feels weird. But it's a good thing that he is only 1 star. If it was a little higher, the younger generation just now would not be able to obtain the inheritance. Thinking of this, his dissatisfaction just now disappeared. So what if you were tall, but your younger generations are not up to par? Su Li was also surprised when she heard this, and then her beautiful eyes showed some surprise. She had never thought that the old man in front of her was so powerful. Okay, now that we've talked, it's time for you to show us what kind of physique you have. Not long after, Lao Yu spoke and looked at Su Li with some anticipation. At this moment, all the true immortals present looked over curiously at the white-haired girl in the hall. And as soon as the words fell, a bone-chilling chill that made the soul tremble broke out without warning, sweeping across the entire world. When Lao Yu and the others felt it, they were also shocked, and then looked up. Su Li's silver hair was dancing, her beautiful eyes were indifferent, and a silver mark of a divine phoenix appeared between her eyebrows. When she raised her sleeves and hands, it was like a goddess of ice descending, looking down at all living beings. Behind him, a huge ice phoenix phantom condensed, and its phoenix eyes were looking at everyone, emitting the terrifying phoenix power. At this moment, when these true immortal souls saw this scene, their pupils all shrank. This is actually the legendary ice phoenix divine body. Someone recognized this terrifying physique and cried out in amazement. Even Old Yu was stunned where he was, his face full of shock. He had not expected that the talent of the girl in front of him was so terrifying. The ice phoenix divine body is one of the best physiques in the universe. If it is immortal, becoming an immortal is just the beginning. It has great hope of becoming an immortal king in the future. For a moment, everyone present looked at Su Li with passionate eyes, as if they were looking at a tempting commodity. If you can pass on your inheritance to such a monster, it would be hard not to carry it forward. My friend, are you willing to accept my inheritance? My 5-star inheritance is no worse than anyone else's, and it's even more suitable for you. On the demon clan side, a black phoenix spoke and extended an olive branch to Su Li. As soon as the words fell, countless voices rushed to promote their own heritage. Why don't you look at me? Although we're not of the same race, we all share the same principles. My path is the path of ice and snow, the path of the sky, and it is also suitable for you. Mine is the same. Water can give birth to all things, and all things are tides. I can also teach you the immortal way of my water clan, as long as you are willing. After hearing these voices, Su Li's pretty face was a little confused, staring at them blankly. She didn't expect that she would be so popular. It seems that these true immortals all have 5-star inheritances. Is it so easy to get 5 stars? Then Su Li fell into hesitation, not knowing what to choose for a moment. The next moment, Old Yu roared like a lion, angrily scolding. You bunch of people, do you want to order civilian? This is my human race's genius, and you alien races still want to inherit it. After hearing this, Xianfeng curled his lips and said, Old Yu, why are you so stingy? There's no rule that the inheritance must be passed down to one's own race. I have a connection with this girl, so why not give it to her? This is a great thing for you humans. Bullshit. Your shabby inheritance was given to a human prodigy like me, but it actually harmed her. Lao Yu cursed angrily. He knew very well that such a genius could at least obtain the inheritance of the immortal king. If he really listened to them, he would be in big trouble. If it was a genius from another family, he wouldn't mind cheating him, but this guy is his own. It's a good seedling that hasn't appeared in many years. Thinking of this, Old Yu gave the immortal general a look, and the two of them understood and protected Su Li behind them, preventing those from getting involved. Sure enough, the next moment, a terrifying aura rose in the distant starry sky. Several bright lights were as dazzling as the sun. When the immortals saw this scene, their pupils suddenly shrank, and they retreated one after another, some even retreating into the starlight. The reason is simple. An immortal king has revived. They all knew very well that the only thing that could revive the immortal king was the physique of the human girl. Oh, to think that a genius of a human race could also give birth to an ice phoenix divine body? How interesting. One of the statues is an old woman, holding a cane, speaking meaningfully. The 2 purple dragon horns on her head are very eye-catching. She is the ancestor of the Tianyuan clan, the purple dragon immortal king. Next to it, there were 2 other figures. One figure blocked out the sky and the sun, with an indifferent face and golden light all over his body, like an almighty Buddha. The other figure was a middle-aged man in a gray robe, with majestic eyes and a righteous face. These two people are the immortal King Lingfo and the immortal King Fao. These three people just stood there, but they brought a strong sense of oppression. How could someone with phoenix blood be born into my human race? What's the origin of your ancestors? Immortal King Fa Wu spoke, with an unquestionable tone and cold eyes, looking at Su Li. It was nothing. It reminded him of an old friend who had a grudge against him. Su Li frowned slightly. This person gave her a very bad feeling. Seeing that she was silent, the Immortal King Fa Wu frowned and asked coldly, "Are you mute?" Immortal King Fa Wu, she is. Old Yu on the side showed a flattering smile and wanted to defend Su Li. However, the next moment, a palm of light came and directly blew Lao Yu away, and the ghost almost dissipated. "Do you have a right to speak here?" The Immortal King Fa Wu said calmly, and then continued to look at Su Li, looking down at him. "I'll give you one last chance. What's the origin of your ancestors?" Su Li's beautiful eyes were startled, and her hands clenched tightly. She had never expected the Immortal King in front of her to be so overbearing. Old Yu just wanted to say a word for her, but he was so cruel. Is this still the righteous and powerful person she knew? Su Li looked at the Immortal King Fa Wu with cold eyes. A hint of murderous intent flashed in her beautiful eyes. She had never wanted to kill someone so much before. "Oh, how dare you look at me like that? Could it be that you are truly as I imagined, a person not of our human race, who wants to enter this inheritance temple and defraud us of our human race's inheritance?" The Immortal King Fa Wu snorted coldly, his eyes fierce, and he raised his hand, and a sword light fell. "Do you really think that I wouldn't dare to attack a youngster like you?" Feeling the power that was so strong that no one had the slightest thought of resistance, Su Li gritted her teeth, still not having the slightest thought of giving in. Seeing this, King Fao was completely disappointed. It seemed that it was just as he thought. The person in front of him was not a human. In that case, he doesn't need to hold back. Just as the sword light was about to fall, the next moment, a gorgeous figure descended from the sky, accompanied by flames, like a phoenix descending into the world. Qiao casually extinguished the sword light, her beautiful eyes cold. She protected Su Li behind her and spoke word by word. "Old thing, you want to die? I'll grant your wish today.